Chapter 5201. Yi Qian didn't refuse the female soldier's intimacy, nor did she put on airs because of her previous contempt. She smiled and answered whatever the female soldiers asked her. She was very amiable. Li Xiushui patted her chest and whispered to Fang Xing, "I'm relieved now." She didn't hold a grudge. God knew how worried she was today. She was afraid that Yi Qian would bring up the past. She tried to talk a few times, but her little heart didn't panic. The quiet Fang Xing lowered her head and rubbed her calf that was kicked by the male soldier. After a while, she pursed her lips and whispered, "She's not that kind of person. You're thinking too much." If Captain Yi really wanted to be calculative, she wouldn't have helped them so much today. She didn't care about the past at all. Yes. You're right. Captain Yi really isn't the type to hold a grudge. Li Xiushui, who was twisting back and forth with one hand on her shoulder, smiled. She saw the figure surrounded by her comrades. After a while, she whispered in Fang Xing's ear, "I was so proud just now. I didn't lose against 5 Yi Qian. Why do I feel like I won? She's so handsome and cool. If I were a man, I would want to chase her. Do you think we can be as good as her one day?" Fang Xing didn't know how to talk about this kind of topic. But if she could be as good as Captain Yi one day, Fang Xing thought seriously for a while and shook her head honestly. "No, it's very difficult." Li Xiushui was a little disappointed. "That's right. With her shooting speed, who can match the speed of 2 people? I doubt even Captain Lei can do it. You're not bad either." Hearing Li Xiushui's disappointment, Fang Xing comforted her dryly. She didn't know how to speak, so she couldn't think of any other way to comfort her. The skinny man's words made Li Xiushui raise her eyebrows. "That's right. I'm not bad either. I'm not as good as Yi Qian in basic training. Then I have to surpass Yi Qian in technical training. A 2-year veteran can't lose to a 6-year recruit." Fang Xing, who had been lowering her head, finally looked up at her comrades. She wanted to say something, but didn't know how to say it. Forget it, since they would be training together in the future, they would know who was stronger and who was weaker. Captain Yi. How could such a powerful person be easily surpassed? If they worked hard, Captain Yi would also work hard. Just now, Xiushui said that Captain Yi had won. She was as happy as if she had won. In fact, she was also very happy. All the female soldiers were beaten by the male soldiers to the point that they could not fight back and were defeated. Only Captain Yi did not let the male soldiers take advantage of her. There were also a few male soldiers who said that they had been beaten by Captain Yi. But now, no one thought that Captain Yi would surpass them one day. They were still asking Captain Yi how to do a handstand to catch a male soldier. Fang Xing also wanted to hear. She quietly moved closer so that she could hear more clearly. Although they had lost, the female soldiers were still happy. The male soldiers were also very interested. When the squad leader came over and saw that the female soldiers still had smiles on their faces, she felt slightly better. The female soldiers were all beaten up. As the squad leader, she didn't feel good. Captain Lei saw that she was in a bad mood and called her over for a talk. After a conversation, the twisted axis in her heart turned smoothly. After adjusting her expression, the squad leader came over and said softly, "You all surrounded Yi Qian. Anyway, make a place for her to sit." I forgot. It's all our fault for being too excited. TSK. Before she finished speaking, she pulled the painful place. The female soldier who spoke suddenly felt so painful that the corners of her eyes were oozing with tears. Chapter 5202. Yi Qian quickly helped her up. "Don't move. Sit down slowly. Where does it hurt? Let me take a look." In the military academy, she had always taken care of the students in her class. After leaving the military academy and taking over the formation of the women's special forces, she took care of the female soldiers. Now that she saw that the female soldiers were all injured, she naturally wanted to take care of them more. Her concern made some of the female soldiers feel uncomfortable. She didn't care about how they treated her in the past, and even cared about them. A female soldier dragged her sore feet to Yi Qian's side and bowed deeply to apologize. "I'm sorry, Yi Qian. I was wrong in the past. I'm really sorry." Yi Qian, who was caught off guard, didn't expect a female soldier to bow and apologize to her at this time. She jumped in fright and quickly supported the female soldier, and pulled her to sit down. Since she had started, she might as well tell them everything in the past so that they wouldn't feel burdened in the future and bow and apologize to her from time to time. She felt a little awkward when she suddenly bent over. Captain Lei, who had a panoramic view of the female soldiers, smiled. Yi Qian, who had graduated from university, was about the same age as the female soldiers, but she was much more mature. With her holding the fort, the female soldiers who were still a little impetuous would gradually calm down. Everything was going in a good direction. He believed that in the near future, this group of female soldiers would become the elites of the airborne troop. Xiao Tu, who focused on checking whether the male soldiers beaten by Yi Qian had any broken bones, strode over. Seeing Captain Lei staring at Yi Qian, who was surrounded by the female soldiers, he smiled and said, "Boss, why don't we also learn from Yi Qian's counterattack just now? That wave of awesome maneuvers just now was very lethal. It's quite suitable for us to counterattack and turn defeat into victory. We just need to strengthen our flexibility. We tried it a few times just now. Even the most flexible plum can't be drunk in one go. We found the trick. With some practice we should be able to do it." Xiao Tu was quite confident in himself and his comrades. Captain Lei, on the other hand, thought that it would be very difficult. It was not that he did not have confidence in the male soldiers, but the bones of men were naturally hard. It was like Yi Qian coiling around the abdomen like an agile snake. This made it difficult for the male soldiers, whose muscles were already hard, to complete the movement. He glanced at Little Head, who was always thinking about something good, and sighed. He then advised him earnestly, "Little Head, people should be more practical. The counter-killing move was not suitable for everyone. Some moves were suitable for male soldiers but not female soldiers. In some cases, female soldiers succeed, but male soldiers fail." "Boss, do you mean that we male soldiers can't do that move just now, but only female soldiers can do it? That's impossible." Xiao Tu didn't believe him. He was full of passion now, so how could it be so easily extinguished by cold water? Even Li Zi has found the trick. As long as he tries and practices more, he'll definitely succeed. Would it work? It was a big question mark. How stupid was this kid to train his waist at this age? Moreover, they had to train their leg strength together. Since he wanted to give it a try, as the captain, how could he dampen the enthusiasm of the soldiers? He had to give him his full support. "Okay, you guys learn. Let's see if the female soldiers learn faster or the male soldiers learn faster. This move focuses on flexibility and leg strength. If you want to learn it, you have to train your legs first. There's no need for iron boot. In the future, you have to tie sandbags to your legs when you run. How about this, you and the female soldiers set a time. Whoever can complete Yi Qian's move within the specified time, the loser will be at the disposal of the winner. Let's determine the winner and the loser, lest you give up immediately after tasting the difficulty." Chapter 5203. Little Head really felt that it was not a problem and nodded without thinking. "Okay, I'll go over now." Just as he took a step forward, he quickly retracted his foot. Pulling at the Air Force camouflage training uniform that was crumpled from the fight, Xiao Tu glanced at the female soldiers who had just caught their breath and asked the black-faced boss, "Tonight, the female soldiers were beaten up badly by our male soldiers. Are you still going to let them train overtime as punishment?" During the day, they ran 30 kilometers of armed cross-country, returned to the team at 5 o'clock, had dinner at 5:30, and gathered at 7 o'clock in the evening for training. There was only an hour of rest in between, and then they were directly trained by the boss. Now that they lost, they had to train overtime for an hour. It was a bit miserable. Captain Lay glanced at the veteran who doubted his rules. His lips that had been exposed to the sun for many years pulled out a cold sneer that made Little Head's heart jump. What? When did my words become bullshit? You're the boss. You have the final say. What I said just now was nonsense. It was all nonsense. Little Head answered with a straight face. He was the boss's little follower and always followed the boss's footstep. He would never go astray, because he did not have the courage to go astray. The female soldiers who had enjoyed half a year of comfort should be on the right path this time. The right time, right place, and right people were all in place. The boss made a move, and the good days were over. The fight just now was not a temporary decision made by the boss. As early as the female soldiers went to run 30 kilometers of armed cross-country, he told the male soldiers that he was going to arrange for 3 against 1. They could fight as they usually did. Who the F***ck asked him to be merciful? What fake fight? There was only one word. Courting death. The boss had accumulated power for a long time. Who dared not to obey? What fake fight was? They didn't know, they really didn't know. 1 against 3, to be honest, the male soldiers more or less couldn't bear it in their hearts and didn't dare to be ruthless. As a result, this group of female soldiers was ruthless. They went all out on the field. They intended to go easy for the first time, but there was nowhere to go. The half-real and half-fake fight finally became a real fight. Although the female soldiers spoke gently, they were really fierce. Little Head touched the corner of his mouth, that was punched by a female soldier, and licked it lightly with his tongue. He could still taste the blood. The smell of blood stimulated the tip of his tongue. With the faint smell of iron filling his mouth, the brave factor in his body was stimulated by the blood and became more active. Little Head narrowed his eyes, revealing the light as if he had found a prey. The female soldiers were ruthless. That would be interesting. It was soft and there was no strength to practice it together. The 15-minute break was over, and all the necessary examinations had been completed. There was a pile of blood and wounds, but there was not a single broken bone. Captain Lay felt that it was a pity. After gathering, he frowned and asked the male soldiers, "Who was merciful just now? Stand out." The male and female soldiers stood in line. Captain Lay stood in the middle and said, "Not even a broken bone. Didn't you all eat?" None of the male soldiers stepped forward. They didn't show any mercy, but they didn't beat them to death either. If he really beat him to death, not to mention breaking his bones, he might even break his neck. The female soldiers who were still in pain felt that the male soldiers did not show any mercy. It was already 1 against 3. Was there any mercy? There was none at all. However, the captain thought that he was being lenient. Who would dare to stand out and refute him? Even the male soldiers did not dare to stand out, so they were even less courageous. They could only accept it together. I don't think you guys have tasted the taste of blood but not tears tonight. The male soldiers didn't go all out against the female soldiers for the first time and didn't meet my requirements. Tonight, all of you will be given an extra hour of off-plane training. Chapter 5204. The training ended at 9 o'clock p.m., and the training lasted for an hour, until 10 o'clock p.m. Compared to Yi Qian's past training, until 12 o'clock a.m., this 1 hour was much more relaxing. At 10 o'clock p.m., the female soldiers who were tired all day could finally help each other back to the dormitory to rest. The class leader noticed that Yi Qian did not return to the dormitory with her. She turned around and looked behind her. It was pitch black and Yi Qian's figure was nowhere to be seen. The class leader lowered her eyes slightly. The guesses she had during the day became even stronger. The vice class leader opened the door to the dormitory. Lu Hui, who was the first to enter, was lying on the ground. She said weakly, "You guys go ahead. I want to rest." Don't call me. From the training ground to the dormitory, she used up the last of her strength. She was now like a soft noodle. She could only lie down and not stand up. Everyone was the same. When they saw Lu Hui lying down, they were all discouraged. They might as well just lie down next to each other. When the vice class leader saw this, she also wanted to lie down. She laid down and let out a long sigh of satisfaction. It was so comfortable that she wanted to sleep. The lights were bright. 3 people were lying on the clean cement floor. In less than 3 minutes, Tang Lian was sleeping soundly. Lu Hui, who was sleeping next to her, turned her head and sighed. Did she get hit the lightest? It doesn't hurt at all. I'm in so much pain that I can't sleep. Don't talk. I'll make sure you fall asleep in 5 minutes, Guo Chui said weakly. She was in so much pain that she could not open her eyes. She just wanted to sleep. Yi Qian is not back yet. I can't sleep. Lu Hui, who did not want to move, glanced at the empty upper bunk. I still want to talk to her. The vice class leader, who was resting with her eyes closed, said, There must be something that needs to be done. Don't wait. Rest and wash up. Sleep early to recover your energy. I'll close my eyes and sleep while waiting. Don't talk anymore. It's too noisy. Li Xiushui said vaguely. Her eyelids became heavier and heavier. In the end, she fell asleep with her clothes on. Yi Qian, who came back around 12 o'clock p.m., gently pushed the door open and gently closed it. As soon as he took a step, he looked down at the ground where the sound of breathing came from. They were all sleeping on the ground. The autumn nights in the southwest were already cold. If they were to lie on the cold concrete floor, wouldn't they catch a cold the next morning? She tiptoed closer, bent down, and gently nudged the female soldier sleeping on the outermost bed. She didn't know who it was, but she had to wake them up to sleep on the bed first. He pushed her twice, but she didn't wake up. Instead, he heard her mumbling in her sleep. Bet. When. Li. Harm Lu Hui's voice. Even in his dreams, he wanted to win a bet. Yi Qian didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He nudged her again. Lu Hui, don't sleep on the floor. You'll catch a cold. Get up and sleep on the bed. It took at least 6 pushes to wake Lu Hui up from her deep sleep. Lu Hui, who was sitting up in shock in her dream, saw a black shadow squatting beside her. She couldn't help but shout, Who is it? Yi Qian smiled and said, Scared? Why are they all sleeping on the floor? Go back to bed and sleep. Be careful not to catch a cold. Hearing the familiar voice, Lu Hui breathed a sigh of relief. She rubbed her eyes sleepily and yawned. I'm too tired. How can I climb into bed when I'm so dirty? You just came back? What time is it now? Yeah, I just came back. It's a little past 12. She answered softly and nudged the next one awake. Lu Hui shook her stiff arms and nudged her comrade awake. Why are you so late? Did you get punished by Captain Lei again? That shouldn't be the case. We should be the ones being punished. She didn't expect Yi Qian to come back late because of intensive training. I didn't get punished. I'm going to train. Yi Qian didn't hide it and said it out loud. Lu Hui, who was in a deep sleep, didn't even react. She replied in a daze, Oh. She nudged Guo Chui awake, took off her clothes and climbed into bed. In the middle of the night, everyone was extremely sleepy. They didn't ask Yi Qian why he came back so late. They closed their eyes, took off their clothes, and fell asleep immediately. The night was still young. It wouldn't be too late to talk about it in the morning. Chapter 5205. The next morning, when Lu Hui woke up, she saw that Yi Jian had finished washing up and came in. After saying morning, she seemed to have thought of something. Her eyes suddenly widened and she shouted in shock, Yi. Captain Yi, did you tell me something very important last night? Early in the morning, the dormitory became lively because of Lu Hui's energetic voice. It wasn't time to assemble yet, but the female soldiers who were already awake sat up with bright eyes. What important thing? Why didn't they know? They only remembered that Yi Qian came back rather late last night and woke them up from their sleep. After that, there was nothing else. They were so tired that they closed their eyes when they took off their clothes and went to bed. They didn't have any recollection of what they said after that. Yi Qian, who was used to waking up early, put down the basin and looked at Lu Hui with a smile. She could still remember what happened in the middle of the night after waking up. She raised her eyebrows, revealing a playfulness that Lu Hui had never seen before. I only said something. I didn't say anything important. That's right, that's right. Yi Qian only said that the floor was cold and told them to go back to bed. He didn't say anything else. What important thing did he say? Why don't I have any recollection of it? Lu Hui, did you remember wrongly? Li Xiushui asked. She really didn't know what happened. They were in the same dormitory. Could it be that Lu Hui was the only one who knew what happened? Tang Lin also smiled. I don't know either. Lu Hui, did something happen in your dream? For example, did you get beaten up by a male soldier in your dream? Fang Xing, who was sleeping in the lower bunk of Yi Qian, quietly got up. She folded her pants while listening carefully. She thought for a moment and seemed to remember that Yi Qian didn't say anything. He said it, he definitely said it. I have to think about it. I have to think about it carefully. After getting up from the bed, Lu Hui neatly makes the bed and folds the quilt. After a while, she folds the quilt into a square tofu block. The edges and corners of the quilt show that she has spent a lot of effort learning how to fold a quilt. Soon, the other female soldiers got up one by one. One by one, the tofu cubes were arranged in a straight line. Li Xiushui, who had pulled open the bedsheet and smoothed it until there was not a single wrinkle, sighed. My OCD was greatly satisfied after I entered the army. When I was studying, I liked to arrange the towels, mouthwash cups, the bucket under the bed, and the basin in the dormitory in a straight line. Unfortunately, it would all be messed up in less than 3 seconds. Later, my dad said that my illness would definitely be cured when I reached the army, so I came here. Looking around the dormitory, Li Xiushui saw that all the items were neatly arranged in a straight line. Li Xiushui felt that his mood had become sunny and cloudless. The army was indeed a paradise for people with OCD. Even the buns and steamed buns in the cafeteria were neatly arranged as if they were made of brick. No matter how you looked at it, it was comfortable. Lu Hui was still thinking about what Yi Qian said last night. She was not on guard against Li Xiushui jumping the topic so far. For a moment, her train of thought was interrupted. She completely could not remember what important thing Yi Qian said last night when she was half awake. She was sure that Yi Qian did say something at that time, but she was too sleepy and did not take it to heart. Guochui saw that she was still pulling her hair and thinking. She rolled down from the top bunk and smiled. All right, with your memory, even if you pulled out all your hair, you still might not remember. It's better to think about what Captain Lei will do today. We have to be mentally prepared in advance. If we get beaten up like last night again, in less than a week, half of our bodies will be paralyzed. The topic was a little heavy. The dormitory, which was talking and laughing just now, suddenly became quiet. Chapter 5206. Lu Hui shuddered when she thought about last night's 3 versus 1. Hemiplegia is considered a light injury. I'm worried that other than Captain Yi, we'll all walk out of here alive. Although I'm prepared to sacrifice myself at any time, and I've never fallen behind in my thinking, I prefer choosing to sacrifice myself on the battlefield rather than being beaten to death by male soldiers. The vice squad leader, who had been listening to her comrades with a smile, looked at Lu Hui helplessly. Don't worry, Comrade Lu. You definitely won't sacrifice yourself. You'll definitely retire and go home. Clapping her hands, the vice squad leader said to her comrades who had all woken up and were preparing to wash up, I'll say a few things about last night's fight. First, we need to be clear about our current status and what we might face in the future. Second, we need to have the right attitude. We can't be passive or evasive. Third, don't think too highly of yourself. With Yi Qian by our side, we need to have confidence in ourselves and firmly believe that one day we'll beat the male soldiers to the ground. Fourth, Yi Qian came back late last night because she had been training all this time. How did she beat the male soldiers? How did she get to where she is today? It's all because of her own hard work. If we can all learn from Yi Qian, beating the male soldiers won't be difficult. The important thing is whether we can endure hardships like Yi Qian. After the day and night training, we'll train overtime until midnight. This time, the dormitory was as quiet as chickens. Even breathing could not be heard. Everyone was dumbstruck, as if they had been hit by a master. Their hearts were filled with complex emotions. Gulp, a comrade gulped. Perhaps he had used too much strength, but he had clearly raised his throat and his stomach had finally made a sound. Training until midnight, their cautious and worshipful gazes all slanted towards Yi Qian, who was standing at the back. Was she made of iron or cast of bronze? She trained day and night until she was exhausted, yet she could still train overtime until midnight. How did she do it? Yi Qian, who was standing at the back, realized what the vice squad leader had heard Lu Hui's question and what she had answered. She looked up and coincidentally met the vice squad leader's gaze. The vice squad leader winked at her. Her eyes seemed to be sending some kind of message to Yi Qian. Then she smiled and said, Lu Hui said she forgot something very important. I think it should be this. Isn't it, Lu Hui? Lu Hui, who was standing in line, replied loudly, Yes, deputy. After training until 12 o'clock in the morning, he felt that he would really kowtow to Captain Yi and admit his mistake. Yi Qian laughed. The vice squad leader wanted to provoke the female soldiers again. In the future, she would be pulled out by the squad leader, vice squad leader, and Captain Lei from time to time to provoke the female soldiers. She was both a whetstone and a wind vane. She, who had entered the airborne force to study, existed to stimulate the female soldiers. There was nothing wrong with being dragged out from time to time. When the female soldiers were stimulated, they would feel more pressure and study harder. They would not dare to let their guard down, lest they become a joke. Mutual stimulation, mutual encouragement, mutual win-win situation. Soon, everyone in the female soldier class knew that Yi Qian had trained until midnight last night and came back. Early in the morning, he was so shocked that he had to hold his chin to prevent it from dislocating. When the vice squad leader saw her comrades' shocked expressions by Yi Qian, her eyes were full of smiles. I know you all want to surpass the strongest person because you are not willing to fall behind. Now Yi Qian has become the strongest soldier among us. Do you still have the confidence to surpass Yi Qian? Chapter 5207. The vice squad leader asked the female soldiers if they had the confidence to surpass Yi Qian. At the same time, she also asked herself if she had the confidence. In the end, did she have the confidence? She would definitely work hard and leave no regret. After asking the female soldiers and herself, the vice squad leader smiled and asked Yi Qian, do you think they can surpass you? She winked lightly. Yi Qian needed to understand the meaning behind her words. Reporting to the vice squad leader, I think, based on the current training, it's very difficult. Yi Qian answered seriously and analyzed the reason. My training is twice as much as theirs. I use twice as much training to complete every day's training. For every step they take, I've already taken 2 steps. I doubt they can surpass me. He completely understood the hint in the vice squad leader's eyes. His 100% answer made the vice squad leader secretly happy. The female soldier's knees went weak. The pressure of one mountain became the pressure of 2 mountains. They had only taken 1 step, but Yi Qian had already taken 2 steps. In the long run, Yi Qian would go further and further, climb higher and higher, and leave them far behind. Just thinking about it was terrifying. The vice squad leader saw the expressions on the female soldiers' faces. She knew when to stop. She shouldn't be too harsh on them. She should push them forward at the appropriate time. Yi Qian's cooperation was mostly due to Captain Lei's instructions. This was good. With her around, they could clearly see the gap between them. Knowing the gap made them work harder. Think about what I said. If you want to surpass Yi Qian without some action, it will always be an unrealistic dream. Alright, go wash up. They gathered at 5:30. It was now 5:20. They had to hurry. Before dispersing, the vice squad leader looked at Yi Qian gratefully and nodded slightly to express her gratitude. When they arrived at the bathroom, Lu Hui went to Yi Qian to confirm her guess. She was probably afraid that she couldn't withstand the continuous blows. She covered her chest and asked, "Captain Yi, can we tell you the truth? Did you come home late in the past because you were training? You were training with the male soldiers." Yi Qian, who was washing his face with water, looked up and wiped away the water around his eyes. He didn't answer directly and smiled. "Guess. I wouldn't have asked if I could guess." Lu Hui pursed her lips. Her entire body was almost pressed against Yi Qian. "Did you really go to train with the male soldiers?" The smile on Yi Qian's lips deepened. He had seen through Lu Hui's little scheme, but he was too embarrassed to say it out loud. It seemed like last night had been a big blow to Lu Hui. She now knew how to be cautious. "Yes. Any other questions?" "I can answer all at once," Yi Qian replied. Her dark eyes were smiling as she looked at Lu Hui. At that moment, Lu Hui felt as if her thoughts had been completely seen through by those clear eyes of hers. Her gaze was unnaturally evasive. Forget it, she didn't want to hide anymore. Captain Yi must have seen through her little thoughts, otherwise he wouldn't say that she could answer at once. Thinking of this, Lu Hui did not feel embarrassed and asked generously, "Is it training for professional skills?" The few taps that were running the water simultaneously lowered the volume of the water. Only by lowering the volume of the water could they hear Yi Qian's answer better. "That's right. I'm from the army. I've never been in contact with airborne training. Naturally, I would focus on professional skills training." So, Yi Qian, who had finished washing up, patted Lu Hui's shoulder. Seeing that her expression was becoming more and more stiff, Yi Qian was very satisfied and said slowly, "So, you have to be prepared." "Prepare for what?" "Be prepared to be surpassed by her in professional skills training." Chapter 5208. The female soldiers who were secretly eavesdropping looked at each other. Their shoulders were trembling, and they could see the fear in each other's eyes. No way. Could it be that she really only used half a year to catch up and surpass us veterans? "Retreat, retreat, I'm afraid I'll faint if I keep listening." Li Xiushui nudged Tang Liyin, who was still standing there stupidly. The two of them quickly picked up their basins and left the bathroom as if there was a beast chasing after them. Fang Xing slowly closed the tap and pursed her lips as she looked at Guochui beside her. She lifted her chin slightly, indicating if she wanted to go out with them. Guochui nodded, wrung out the towel, and left with Fang Xing. When they left the bathroom, they saw Li Xiushui and Tang Liyin standing outside. When they saw them come out, they pointed to the front. The four of them tacitly carried their basins to the corner in front of them to talk for a while. The bathroom was designed in a T shape with 3 rows of tap. Yi Qian was in the left row, Guochui and the others were on the right. The 2 sides were back to back. Li Xiushui and Tang Liyin were at the front. Now that the 4 of them had left, only Yi Qian and Lu Hui were left. The trembling Lu Hui's face stiffened. She forcefully pulled down the corners of her mouth and revealed a smile that was uglier than crying. "No way, it's only been half a year and you've even surpassed me in professional skills?" She realized that she had almost become a little stutterer when speaking to Yi Qian these past few days. Yi Qian smiled mysteriously like an enlightened monk. "I don't know, maybe I've surpassed you, maybe I'm still at the bottom. After all, you're all veterans of the old army. No matter how hard I work, it's only been half a year." "If you say that, then I can only think that way." During the professional skills training in the afternoon, I'll definitely watch you more carefully than before. Captain Yi, I won't give in to you just because you're a captain. Lu Hui was not discouraged and was not afraid of being hit. She was still very confident in herself. The vice squad leader, who had finished washing up early, bumped into the squad leader. There were still a few minutes left before the two of them stood in the corner of the corridor to talk. The vice squad leader told the squad leader about Yi Qian's late return from training last night. The squad leader smiled and sighed. Yesterday, I suspected that Yi Qian came back late every night because he was secretly pulling her to train. I wasn't wrong, he really trained every night without fail. I admire her perseverance. He has been in disguise for half a year, and he no longer disguised himself after returning from the exercise. Vice Squad Leader, what do you think this means? The vice captain did not even think about it. He said in a deep voice, it shows that Captain Ye's technical training has reached the level where there is no need to disguise anymore. Yesterday, when Captain Lei mentioned Captain Yi, his words were full of appreciation. It could be seen from Captain Lei's attitude. Captain Yi is very likely to reach the level of our airborne soldiers in only half a year. The class leader nodded. That's right. There will be technical training today. Whether or not it is as we have guessed, we will know today. The vice president suddenly laughed. The class leader looked sideways and asked with a smile, what are you laughing at? I'm laughing at the troublesome Lu Hui. I'm afraid she'll suffer another blow today. The class leader couldn't help but laugh when she thought about the bet. That's right, as long as it's a bigger blow than yesterday. Yesterday was the same basic training for the two armies. Captain Yi was better than us, so Lu Hui could accept it. If even Captain Yi surpasses Lu Hui in the technical training of airborne soldiers, I'm really worried that she will be so shocked that she will commit suicide. Lu Hui's psychological quality is quite strong. She can take the initiative to admit her mistake. I hope she can maintain a good mentality in today's training. The whistle blew. The squad leader and the vice squad leader did not discuss too much and brought out their respective group. The vice squad leader saw Guichui and the other three running out of the corner of the fire protection corridor with a straight face. The four of them quickly returned to the dormitory and did not see the vice squad leader. After breakfast, there were 3 types of combat training: close combat, resistance to being thrown, and bare-handed capturing technique. The female soldiers who were thrown around by the male soldiers felt like they were living in hell. They were thrown around by hugs, thrown by shoulders, and thrown by kicks. They experienced all kinds of throwing method. Fortunately, everyone had undergone anti-dizziness training. Otherwise, they would have been dizzy from the fall. You, and Captain. Seeing the female soldiers being thrown by the male soldiers in various ways, Captain Lei's chest seemed to be stuffed with a bomb. He just needed a little stimulation and it would explode. A sharp whistle blew. It was urgent and ear-piercing. From the whistle, one could feel Captain Lei's mood. It was stormy weather. Everyone stop. His voice was as loud as thunder. Thunder and rain. The hearts of the female soldiers who fell and were covered in dust sank to the bottom. They knew what kind of performance they had just now. Against the male soldiers, they were all like recruits who had just joined the army. They were forced to panic by the male soldiers' fierce move. It would be strange if Captain Lei was not angry. Chapter 52:10. Captain Lei did not scold the female soldiers this time. He suppressed his anger, took a deep breath, and shouted, Yi Qian, Xiao Tu, step out. Yes. Yes. The two ran from the line to the front and stood still. Female soldiers, watch carefully. Next, the two of them will demonstrate. Watch carefully. After Captain Lei finished speaking, he took a step back. Yi Qian and Xiao Tu were ready. When Captain Lei blew the whistle, the two clenched their fists, and their eyes were fierce like two fierce beasts confronting each other. The demonstration began, from close combat fighting, the ability to resist falling, and the three major fighting skills to capture the enemy with bare hands. It was so exciting that the female soldiers could not take their eyes off it. They secretly learned how Yi Qian dealt with Xiao Tu's fierce move. After the demonstration, Captain Lei's face improved a little. His cold eyes swept across the female soldiers' faces, and the female soldiers trembled with fear. In the past, they thought it was not bad. They took the training arranged by the male instructor seriously, and the two groups would spar with each other from time to time. It felt quite good. Who knew that when they faced the male soldiers, they were no different from tofu dregs? Only then did they realize that what they thought was good was nothing in the hands of the male soldiers. They even wondered if their 2 or 3 years of military service were just passing time. They strictly demanded themselves and worked hard. How could it be so bad in the end? What was the reason? Captain Lei did not continue to reprimand the female soldiers. They still had the foundation. It was a pity that they met the soldiers he trained. The special scouts in the airborne troops did not have many skills. They were not worthy of the word special. What is fighting? Fighting is what you just saw. I don't care how you trained before. From today onwards, if your fighting training is still like playing house, I have a way to deal with you. The female soldiers who had seen Captain Lei's strength knew that he was not just casually saying it. He would definitely do it. You are now a member of my special reconnaissance team. You are a special scout. Everything in the past will be reset. From today onwards, you need to be stricter with yourself. You can't take it lightly at any time. Don't deny yourself because of a failure. If they can't even deal with you, what qualifications do they have to stand here? All of you have a very good foundation, and I can see that. However, all of you still have a lot of room for improvement and even more potential. The leaders hope that one day you can become a real Special Force Scout. As the captain, I hope that you can integrate into our big team as soon as possible. Together, you will not be inferior to any male soldier. Captain Lei knew how to give a sweet date after a slap. The serious-looking female soldiers listened carefully and remembered every word that Captain Lei said. Yes, they were definitely not inferior to any male soldier. They would definitely do it. Just like Yi Qian. Male squad leaders, teach the female soldiers well. I want to see their results in half a month. Yes. Female soldier class monitor. Here. Keep a close eye on the female soldier class and arrange your training time. Give me a surprise half a month later. Can you do it? Yes. The squad leader replied loudly. Then, she would lead the female soldiers to learn from Yi Qian and use the night time to strengthen their training. The squad leader was confident. The female soldiers were also confident. Yi Qian was also full of confidence in them. In the following basic subject training, every female soldier did quite well. There was no distinction between gender on the training ground. Chapter 52:11. At 10 o'clock in the morning, all the basic training ended. It was time for the 8 hours of specialized training, umbrella training. Even the strong male soldiers had to complete 8 hours of umbrella training every day, sometimes even more. The female soldiers had been waiting for the arrival of the specialized training. They couldn't wait to know if the returning Yi Qian had really surpassed them in everything. After a night of settling down, the female soldiers were not as shocked by Yi Qian's strong return as yesterday. The previous Yi Qian took more than half a year to accept, but the strong return of Yi Qian took only 1 day to be accepted. After the basic training ended, there was a short 15-minute break. Yi Qian twisted the military water bottle placed next to her and drank several mouthfuls. Captain Lei sent a soldier to find her to talk. After twisting the water bottle and patting the dust on her body, Yi Qian followed the male soldier to Captain Lei. Not far behind, Guochui retracted her steps and said to Fang Xing, "Captain, I'm late again." "Then forget it." Fang Xing retracted her steps earlier than Guichui. She didn't want to find Yi Qian, so she nodded because Guichui asked her to. Isn't it more appropriate to find Yi Qian and pull Lu Hui along? Fang Xing thought in her heart, but didn't say it out loud. Guichui also sat down. Well, I won't look for her. Fang Xing looked at her comrade, who seemed to have something on her mind. She held her hands a bit awkwardly, and her mouth opened and closed a few times. Her voice stretched a bit nervously, and she quietly asked, I actually don't know why you want to find Captain Yi. I just don't understand. Afraid that Guichui would blame her for talking too much, Fang Xing hurriedly explained, I don't mean anything else. I just want to know why you're looking for her. Like her, she felt that she didn't need to find Captain Yi for anything. Guichui knew that Fang Xing didn't mean anything else. Seeing her anxious, she patted the back of her hand and said softly, I want to talk to her about tonight's training. It'll be noon when it ends. It's hard to find Yi Qian during the lunch break, so we can only talk to her now. So it's like this. Fang Xing smiled shyly, and her voice was not as nervous as before. I thought you wanted to bet with Captain Yi again. Guichui laughed in a low voice. Although Fang Xing came from Heavenly Province, her temperament was reserved like a girl from Jiangnan. Even her voice was delicate. Ha ha ha, only Lu Hui knows how to make a bet. We won't join in the fun. Do you think Lu Hui will definitely lose? Captain Yi is quite powerful. I don't think she will lose. For the first time, Fang Xing realized that she was wrong. Her expression became serious. My old class monitor is a very powerful person. No difficulty can stop her. The current Yi Qian seems to be even more powerful than our old squad leader. Even Fang Xing would say something like this. Guichui cast a pitiful look at Lu Hui, who was sitting in front of her and resting. Early in the morning, she, Fang Xing, Li Xiushui, and Tang Liyin went to the fire escape to have a chat. Yi Qian had personally admitted that she did come back in the middle of the night to train, so it wasn't impossible for her to be better than all the other female soldiers. Only Lu Hui was still hoping for a fluke. The 15-minute break was over. The male and female soldiers regrouped and began the 8-hour parachute training. The female soldiers' gazes unconsciously fell on Yi Qian. Would Yi Qian continue to be powerful? They began the off-plane shooting training. As the name implied, they needed to shoot at a target while descending. Chapter 52:12. There were dozens of simulators on the training ground at a height of 10 meters. The male and female soldiers grabbed the ropes and quickly descended vertically from the high simulators. Because they needed to shoot, all the soldiers chose to dive. It depended on who was faster, whose posture was the most accurate, and who could shoot the target first. The shooting was done with pistols, and the target was an object hidden on the ground. It needed to be completed during the descent. Soon, gunshots sounded in the empty training ground. Dozens of figures in Air Force blue camouflage uniforms descended vertically from a height of 10 meters. There were 3 more people before it was Lu Hui's turn. While waiting, she glanced at Yi Jian, who was standing beside her. She saw that Yi Jian had been looking up at the figures landing in front of her. She suddenly shouted in a low voice, "Captain Yi, let's start. I don't care if you've learned it or not." She was a 2.5-year veteran. If she really lost, her old comrades in the Air Corps' 18th Division would beat her to death. For the Air Corps' 18th Division, for her own reputation, she couldn't lose. She couldn't lose. She couldn't lose. Yi Qian was looking up at the male soldiers who had completed the dive from the 10-meter high simulators when he suddenly heard Lu Hui's words. He looked sideways and saw that Lu Hui was full of confidence. He smiled slightly and said, "Okay, I'll also try my best to beat you." If she didn't win, Captain Lei and Division Commander Kong would be disappointed. Lu Hui was full of fighting spirit. When she found out that Yi Qian trained alone until midnight every night, she was indeed frightened, but Lu Hui didn't grow up being frightened. She would never admit defeat until the final result was clear. She raised her chin slightly and replied proudly, "Then we'll be the same." Yi Qian was amused by her small appearance. Both of them didn't want to lose and wanted to win. But one of them would win and the other would lose. Sorry, she was here with a mission and couldn't lose. Then, the loser could only be Lu Hui. Soon, it was Lu Hui's turn to board and complete the vertical shooting. She had always been very confident in her professional skills. It wasn't because she had a good sense of self-esteem, but because she was really good at it. After the rope was fastened, Lu Hui rushed out of the cabin at the fastest speed. Then, she shot at 3 points on the ground with the gun in her hand. After 3 consecutive shots, her head was quite close to the ground. If she rushed down, her head would definitely be smashed. She stopped her dive and turned her body. Her feet instantly landed on the ground, and she completed the vertical shooting training. The entire process was light and agile. The entire rope was pulled straight, as if it was pulled out of the cabin in a straight line. His feet landed on the ground upside down, and his figure did not sway at all. He quickly released the rope and ran back to wait for the next turn. Lu Hui, who had completed the vertical landing in a standard posture, made the male soldiers secretly praise her in their hearts. Yi Jian and Lu Hui were not in the same simulation plane. When Lu Hui ran back to the line, Yi Jian ran to complete it. When they passed by each other, their eyes met. They saw the confidence in each other's eyes that they could win. Yi Jian already knew how powerful Lu Hui was. However, Lu Hui did not know how strong Yi Jian was. Lu Hui, who returned to the formation, exhaled slightly and adjusted her breathing. Her eyes fell on the figure who was quickly climbing up the 10-meter-high simulation plane. Lu Hui wasn't the only one staring at Yi Qian. The female soldiers below, including the ones who ran over to complete the vertical shooting training, couldn't help but look over. Captain Yi had entered the professional skills training. Had he surpassed them? Chapter 52:13. Soon, Yi Qian entered the simulation plane. Captain Lei pulled the lock and asked with a smile, "How is it? Do you have the confidence to beat them?" Lu Hui's descent just now was not bad. The soldiers from the 18th Air Division are indeed good. Yi Qian took the lock and completely lowered the protective measures. He then adjusted the belt to the appropriate position and replied indifferently, "If I didn't have the confidence, I wouldn't have shown my hand so early. Since I showed my hand, I naturally had to kill until the end." She still wanted to return to the Snowfield Brigade as soon as possible. How could she allow herself to lose? Ha ha ha, confident enough. Division Commander Kong and I are waiting for you to kill until the end. Are you ready? Captain Lei tightened the lock on Yi Qian's body and carefully checked if it was fastened firmly. Yi Qian, who opened his hands for the final inspection, replied loudly, "Report ready." The figure appeared at the door of the cabin. He leaned over and did a handstand. Then, with a whoosh, his whole body vertically descended. It was fast and stable. One could tell at a glance that his skill was excellent. The female soldiers' eyes widened. Then, they all looked at Lu Hui. The same thought flashed through their minds. Lu Hui is going to lose. Lu Hui rubbed her chest and sighed to her closest comrades. "Don't look at me. I know what you're thinking. This is just the beginning. There's still training to come. I won't admit defeat until the last second." Their eyes all had the same meaning. They were all sure that she would lose. This feeling, sigh, was not good, not good, not good. Bang, 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 3 consecutive shots were fired at the ground target. The first round of vertical shooting training ended. He turned over and landed firmly on the ground. He pulled out the rope and returned to the formation. Guichui felt that her breathing gradually slowed down as Yi Qian ran. Captain Yi was not only better than them in basic training, but also in professional skills training. Everything had just begun. There were more surprises waiting for them. She whispered to Fang Xing, "Let's be mentally prepared. There will be more surprises waiting for us." Fang Xing did not answer. Her eyes were bright as she stared at the running figure. Her hands were unconsciously clenched. The old squad leader said that as long as others could do it, she could do it as long as she worked hard. Captain Yi transferred from the army to the Air Force in only half a year. Even his professional skills were more than 2 years ahead of them. If they worked as hard as Captain Yi, would they also become more powerful? The squad leader and assistant squad leader had already guessed that Yi Qian, who was no longer pretending, would surpass the female soldiers in technical training. The two of them were already mentally prepared before the training began, so they were much calmer now. However, even though the two of them were mentally prepared, they were still shocked by the various specialized technical training that followed. This was because no matter which type of training it was, Yi Qian could easily control it. Not to mention the individual combat training, there was no one in the female soldier class who could surpass her. When it came to tactical training, they needed to work together. The rapport between her and the male soldiers was as if they had been tempered thousands of times. There was not a trace of unfamiliarity at all. It was impossible to tell that she had transferred from the army to the Air Force. At night, she recited all kinds of special treatment methods. She spoke so fluently that it was as if there was a book in front of her. She read and read without any pause in between. For 3 consecutive days, Yi Qian led by a wide margin with the highest score in the class. It was not until Captain Lei personally told the female soldiers that Yi Qian had completed the same training as the male soldiers. He had completed the parachute training on the 5 major aircraft. Lu Hui knew that she had completely lost. Chapter 52:14. The night was dark, and a thin veil of night fog shrouded the camp. Captain Lei, who had just finished a day's training, stood at the front of the line. His sharp eyes that could cut through the night swept over the female soldiers who had lowered their heads. His cold voice pierced into the hearts of the female soldiers like a knife. You think you're great, you think you're good enough, but you don't know that someone better than you works harder than you. Yi Qian only used half a year to surpass you, the Air Force. In half a year, her missions were twice as many as yours, she trained twice as long as yours, and the sweat she put in was many times more than yours. In half a year, she surpassed all of you and reached the level of the male soldiers. In terms of tactical training, she was far ahead of the male soldiers. Yi Qian still doesn't think she's good enough, that there's still room for improvement. Then what about you? Do you think you can surpass Yi Qian and surpass the male soldiers in half a year? I don't think anyone dares to think so. No one dared to think that they could surpass a soldier who was more than 2 years old and had good comprehensive ability in half a year. The female soldiers didn't dare, and neither did the male soldiers. If Captain Lei hadn't told them, they wouldn't have believed that Yi Qian could surpass them in half a year. They would have doubted the truth and suspected that Yi Qian was actually a paratrooper before this. They always thought they were good, but compared to Yi Qian, they were like heaven and earth. They thought about how they didn't want Yi Qian to stay and how they rejected and treated him coldly. They thought about how they wanted Yi Qian to leave, but Yi Qian secretly worked twice as hard as them. At that moment, the shame and anger in their hearts reached its peak. It was as if their faces had been slapped dozens of times. They were embarrassed and painful. I also believe that you're not willing to be left behind and want to prove that you can do the same. I'll give you a chance to prove yourself. As long as you're not afraid of hardships, not afraid of fatigue, and can persevere to the end like Yi Qian, 1 year later, I believe you'll be as good as Yi Qian, better than you are now. Do you believe you can do it? They didn't dare to say that they were better than Yi Qian, because in a year's time, Yi Qian would only be better than them. After 3 days of training, Captain Lei was very satisfied with the female soldiers' tenacity. In addition, Yi Qian's crushing performance deeply stimulated this group of female soldiers. The more tired they were, the louder their voices, the tighter they pressed, and the better their reflexes. Sure enough, he still had to force it a little. The effect was obvious and visible to the naked eye. He believed that these female soldiers would be able to achieve great results after going through tough training. 1 year, if he was given 1 year, he would definitely transform these female soldiers from head to toe. In the air above the field, the voices of the female soldiers echoed for a long time. They could do it, they could do it. A year later, they would definitely be as outstanding as Yi Qian. They would definitely be more outstanding than they were now. With Captain Lei's advice from time to time, Yi Qian wanted to finish her training and return to the team as soon as possible. She really wanted to return to the team as soon as possible. The Snowfield Brigade, which had a strong sense of belonging, was her unit and her home. After disbanding and returning to the dormitory, the moment Yi Qian stepped into the dormitory, Lu Hui, who was following closely behind, immediately closed the door. Then she pushed Yi Qian's shoulders from behind with both hands. Tonight, she had to do something big. Seeing this, Guo Chui pursed her lips and secretly laughed. Li Xiushui and Tang Liyin pretended to cough, but their faces were full of ridicule. Chapter 52:15. Fang Xing blinked as if she had thought of something. She quickly moved to the vice squad leader's side and smiled. She knew what Lu Hui wanted to do. 3 days of training was enough for the female soldiers to realize the truth. It was also enough for Lu Hui to know that she had lost. Today, she no longer believed that she, a 2-year-old paratrooper, was better than Yi Qian. Even if she lost, she had to lose fair and square. Yi Qian, who was caught off guard, was pushed by her from behind. He turned his head and glanced at the female soldiers standing beside him. From their expressions, he knew what Lu Hui wanted to do. He turned around and placed his hands on Lu Hui's shoulders. His clear eyes held a smile. I know what you want to do now. You don't have to kowtow. I can accept your apology. Lu Hui saw that Yi Qian had guessed what she wanted. She was not a shy person, so she became even more open. That won't do. A soldier has to keep his word. He has to keep his word. You've already kept your word. Kneel. I don't think that as soldiers we should kneel because of a bet. It'll lose the pride of a soldier. We have many ways to reflect on our mistake. There's no need to choose the method that will break the pride of a soldier. If you kneel and admit your mistake today, although you've fulfilled your promise, you've lost your pride. This is a very stupid method. The vice squad leader said, Yi Qian is right. It's okay to admit your mistake, but losing the pride of a soldier is not acceptable. Lu Hui frowned and looked deeply at Yi Qian. Yi Qian, I know you're thinking for me. Although you're not wrong, I made such a ridiculous bet because I looked down on you from the bottom of my heart. That's why I didn't hesitate to make the bet. I know that kneeling is losing the pride of a soldier, but I want to teach myself a lesson. From now on, I'll remember to never underestimate an enemy. I can't be arrogant and end up humiliating myself. She wanted to teach herself a lesson that she would never forget. From now on, she would remember it and never do it again. Her attitude was exceptionally sincere. Through her eyes, he could feel her determination to admit her mistakes. Even though she knew that kneeling down would cause her to lose her pride, Lu Hui still insisted on paying for her past mistakes and decisions. Yi Qian admired Lu Hui's honesty. She smiled and said, If you really want to use kneeling to show your sincerity, I think you can choose a more sincere way to admit your mistake. For example, in the future, you will follow me closely during training. Whatever I do, you will do. How about that? Are you scared? Yes, Lu Hui, I think this is good. In the future, no matter how Yi Qian trains, you can train with him. I think it's pretty good. Just listen to our advice, don't kneel. You're in the wrong and so are we. How about this? Let's all bow to Yi Qian and say sorry. What do you think? Li Xiushui suggested. Lu Hui had mentioned Yi Qian before, and so had she. The assistant class monitor felt that Li Xiushui was right. As the assistant class monitor, she was also in the wrong. That's right. Since we need to admit our mistakes, let's admit our mistakes together. As the assistant class monitor, I need to reflect on myself and take the lead to admit my mistakes to Yi Qian. Yes. I've wanted to say sorry to Yi Qian for a long time. Tang Liyin nodded quickly. She was also in the wrong, but she was too embarrassed to say it. Sigh, she was embarrassed and shy. She was also afraid that Yi Qian wouldn't accept it. The more she thought about it, the less she had the courage to stand up. Chapter 52:16. In the end, all the female soldiers in the dormitory were led by the vice squad leader to apologize to Yi Qian. Yi Qian, who had always thought that she was partly to blame, first accepted the female soldiers' sorry, and then bowed deeply to them in apology. Because in the past, she had done it on purpose. She was also in the wrong. As she bowed to apologize, a few female soldiers rushed over to help Yi Qian up, afraid that her waist would bend all the way to the ground. Lu Hui even said, Don't. You have to bow to us and apologize. I'm so nervous. Also, isn't the curve of your waist a little too big? Why does it feel like it's bigger than ours? My head is about to hit the ground. I'm so nervous that I want to bow to you again. In the end, it became a competition to see whose waist is softer and whose forehead can hit the ground first. Yi Qian suddenly teased. After being stunned for a moment, the female soldiers couldn't help but laugh. Captain Yi from the army, they really like her now. The previous Yi Qian. Well, they still didn't like it. Li Xiushui sighed. It's like a dream. It's like stepping on cotton. It's too unreal. Yi Qian, you won't suddenly change back, right? To be honest, if you change back to the previous Yi Qian, even if you're a captain, I still won't like it. This sigh was unanimously approved by everyone. The vice squad leader's face was even tense, afraid that Yi Qian would change back to the previous Yi Qian in the next second. Yi Qian felt a little sorry for them. How much psychological trauma did her previous self leave on them? She said very seriously, You don't like the previous Yi Qian. Actually, I also hated the previous Yi Qian. Otherwise, I wouldn't have put in so much effort into training. I just hope that one day, I won't be the person that I hate. The female soldiers all laughed softly. The atmosphere was harmonious and friendly, and there was no longer the coldness of the past. The sentry blew the whistle, and the female soldiers who had been training for the day went to bed. The sun had not risen the next day, and the horizon had just turned white. A new day of training was about to begin. Today's training was always the easiest. Today's training would always be the easiest. Tomorrow's training would start in sweat. Deep in the night, the sentries stood guard with guns until dawn. It was already late at night in the southwest of our country. The wilderness was silent and everything was dormant. On the other side of the world, until 1997, when all the factions were disarmed and reorganized into political parties, civil strife had already spread throughout the country. In 1997, a government was formed. In 1999, civil strife broke out again. By the end of 2003, the government controlled less than a third of the country. In the autumn of 2005, the civil strife in Libya plunged the citizens into deep trouble. Our country sent peacekeepers to Libya to stop the conflict and restore peace. Xia Jinyuan arrived in Libya at the end of July this year, accompanied by 7 members of the Snowfield Brigade. If there were no accidents, they could return to China at the end of November. It was 11:30 p.m. in China and 4:00 p.m. in Gataga, Libya's largest city. A bulletproof armored military vehicle drove through the streets that were almost completely destroyed on both sides. It headed south of the city. Behind the armored vehicle, a group of dark-skinned Libyan children chased after it, shouting something incomprehensible. A few reporters from an unknown country came out of the ruins carrying camera equipment. When they saw the group of children chasing after the armored military vehicle, A male reporter held a bunch of candy in his hand. He said "Hey" to the children and stretched out his palm. Under the sunlight, the colorful candy wrapper in his palm looked particularly beautiful. Chapter 52:17. The children who were chasing after the vehicle shouted and ran towards the male reporter. Inside the vehicle, the T6 combatant retracted his gaze from the observation window and said to Xia Jinyuan, who was resting with his eyes closed beside him, "Another group of foreign reporters came to report on their mission. They took a few photos outside the war zone, took a few photos of the ruins, and framed a few Libyan citizens. After completing their report from the war zone, they'll be able to complete their mission and gain both fame and benefit." There were a total of 8 people in the armored vehicle. The driver was Bai He, who was proficient in 6 languages, including the smaller languages of a large ethnic group like Libya. He looked outside and said calmly, "It's all for the sake of completing their mission. Do you expect them to risk their lives? Don't be so cynical. You're already a married man, so why are you still so immature? You're still acting like a hothead and will be despised for being immature." On May 1st of this year, T6 combatant Wu Yu and Njyasin held their wedding. The Snowfield Brigade sent 3 representatives to attend, including Bai He. The T6 combatant, who was holding a gun, raised his long leg and kicked the back of the driver's seat. "Shut up. My relationship with my wife is very good. She likes my type. What's the matter? Are you jealous? You're really blind. I've been jealous since your wedding. Did you only realize it now?" Bai He replied with a cold expression. Even his voice was a few degrees colder. The temperature outside was 36 to 37 degrees, but the temperature inside the vehicle was rapidly dropping. The T6 combatant laughed until his delicate baby face was full of pride. "I want you to be jealous. It can't be helped. I'm someone with a wife. How would a bachelor like you know how good it is to have a wife? I don't mind if you're jealous. Just you wait. I'll definitely find you a prettier sister-in-law later." Bai He, who was born into a scholarly family in Jiangnan and had a gentle temperament, replied angrily. The T6 combatant laughed even more sneakily. "I don't care about a prettier sister-in-law. Besides, it's still a question whether you'll be able to find one." He hit the nail on the head and pointed out the crux of the problem. Bai He looked at the captain, who was sitting next to him with a helmet covering his face. "Q King, at least say something. The T6 combatant is stabbing us bachelors in the hearts again." The sun was shining brightly outside, and it was stuffy and hot inside the armored vehicle. Xia Jinyuan, who was sitting in the front, took off the blue helmet covering his face, revealing an extremely handsome face. Xia Jinyuan. And. We're both married people, so we have something in common. G3, who was pretending to be asleep next to him, pretended not to hear him. He started snoring to indicate that he was asleep and would not get involved. It was better not to do such things that would provoke jealousy and hatred. Who knew if he would get beaten up one day? T6 might be young and ignorant, but he was a few years older than him. He was scared. T6, who could not find an ally, decided not to provoke the 6 bachelors in the vehicle anymore. TSK. Forget it. He would be merciful and not say anything else. Inside the vehicle, a call suddenly came from the intercom. Chapter 52:18. It was not a good thing to call from the main station here. It often meant that something major had happened. But he quickly switched to the public channel so that all his comrades in the car would know immediately. The car drove slowly on the dilapidated street. Xia Jinyuan, G3, and the other members of the Snowfield Brigade coldly watched the surrounding environment as the car drove. In this city where guns were required to be carried on the streets, it was necessary to keep a clear mind at all times. Otherwise, if one was not careful, one might become a ghost under the gun. Even sitting in a bulletproof armored vehicle was not necessarily safe. No, even driving a tank might encounter an anti-tank missile. Even the king of land battles would have to kneel down if he encountered one. A week ago, when the Italian peacekeeping forces were on a patrol, a shoulder-fired anti-tank missile equipped with a long-wave infrared missile was fired from the ruins on the street. It directly hit the king of land battles, who was opening the way in front, and blew it up on the spot. The tank soldiers and deputies were all killed. An armored vehicle was blown over by the blast, causing 3 people to be seriously injured and 2 to be lightly injured. They were still lying in the borderless hospital. Whether they were dead or alive was not known. Even if there were sacrifices, they probably would not tell. There was news from the main station that 3 reporters from the Gulf Coast and 2 British reporters went missing after entering the war zone. The last location showed that they were at an underground restaurant in the Southern District, which was only 8 kilometers away from the war zone a few days ago. The Gulf Coast authorities contacted China and asked for help to find the missing Gulf Coast reporters. Since there are British reporters missing, wouldn't it be easier to directly ask the British peacekeeping forces to find their missing reporters? Why did they look for us instead? He was puzzled and raised the volume to answer coldly. The T6 combatant straightened his body, frowned, and thought for a while. He leaned forward and whispered to Xia Jinyuan, "Could it be that the missing person is the Gulf Coast reporter who passed by our Chinese peacekeeping force 2 days ago with his nose in the air? 2 men and a woman." They spoke in a sarcastic manner, and said behind our backs that the equipment of our peacekeeping soldiers was a few grades worse than the equipment of their Gulf Coast soldiers. Xia Jinyuan did not answer T6. He entered the channel and asked the main station quietly, "2 men and a woman?" "That's right. 2 men and 1 woman. They are all reporters from the Bay Sea government television station. The woman is quite famous in the Bay Sea. She often writes some critical news with sharp words and tricky angles. She likes to stir up conflicts and create stronger debate." With the focus on the female reporter, it could be seen that she was the main character of the 3. Xia Jinyuan stretched his long legs lazily, like a sleeping lion that had eaten its fill in the afternoon. "Did they say anything else? He doesn't look easy to get close to." As for the subtext, the people at the front desk understood. The comrades in the car also understood. Who was he referring to when he said that it was not easy to get close to? Everyone was well aware. Her words were sharp, her angles were tricky, and she liked to provoke conflicts. I'm afraid that the negative news in the country would directly cause a qualitative leap when it reached her. He really didn't want to look for such a female reporter. The TV station was quite understanding. If it were them, they would not be happy either. However, they had no choice. The higher-ups had ordered them to go to the Southern District to find the 3 Gulf Coast reporters. After cutting off the communication, the gloomy he was no longer in the mood to drive. What should I do? To save or not to save? The 6 Snowfield Brigade members in the car all looked at Xia Jinyuan. K7 silently reloaded the magazine. To save or not to save? Could he refuse? He couldn't. Xia Jinyuan took out a piece of chewing gum from his pocket and popped it into his mouth. He looked back at his comrades who had gone through life and death with him. "I thought about refusing, but it's obvious that I can't refuse. Let's go and take a look first. The British side has already sent troops over to meet up with them." Chapter 52:19. Wanhai was rather special, so it was impossible not to save them. Even if they could save them, it would depend on how they were going to do it. After passing through the relatively calm streets and crossing over to the Southern District, the originally white sunlight had turned a little clearer. The streets on both sides had also become a lot more lively. A few children could even be seen kicking a soccer ball that was so old that its original color could not be seen on the side of the street that had been ravaged by artillery fire. Here, the most common form of entertainment was not easy to come by. In a war-torn country, survival was the foundation of the people. What was entertainment? Some children had never enjoyed the joy of childhood since they were born. 8 kilometers away from the southern district, in the heavy fire zone where the two armies were fighting a few days ago, one of the artillery shells accidentally entered the civilian area and caused heavy casualties. That day, Xia Jinyuan had led his comrades here to rescue the wounded, but they did not participate in the crossfire. The peacekeeping troops were not allowed to participate in the crossfire between the two countries unless it was absolutely necessary. That was the rule. They would come again today. The T6 combatant who got out of the car looked down at the foot that had accidentally kicked his foot. He waved at the boy who was standing timidly not far away and did not dare to come over because of their combat uniforms. He shouted in English to ask him to step back a little so that he could kick the soccer ball over. The team's most frequent resting activities were basketball and soccer. The T6 combatant was quite good at soccer. He lifted his foot, exerted strength in his calf, and kicked the old soccer ball. Based on his calculations, the ball would definitely be kicked to the side of the boy who had retreated a lot further. However, he did not calculate whether the soccer ball could withstand the force of his foot. He only heard a bang and the sound of several bullets being loaded beside him. The relaxed atmosphere instantly tensed up, and they prepared for battle at the speed of light. The T6 combatant looked at the soccer ball that he had kicked with a blank expression. He had only wanted to kick the soccer ball over for him to pick up out of kindness when he saw the boy looking at him with eyes full of distrust and fear. That was all. F***K. You scared me. The V8 combatant, who had quickly hidden behind the armored vehicle, looked at the T6 combatant's right foot. He cursed, put away his gun, and walked out. He sneered. This kid has nowhere to use his strength. He kicked a kid's soccer ball so hard that it exploded. Are we going to pay for it? Or are we going to pay for it? The boy in front, who was still waiting for the football to be kicked, was about to cry when he saw this. Then, a few boys who were scattered all over the place came out timidly from every corner. Their clear and ignorant eyes looked at their only football, which was also the football that could give them the most happiness. Seeing that the round and round football had been kicked through at this moment and was still hanging on the foot of a soldier from an unknown country, everyone showed a sad expression. They played football for a few years. They were afraid that it would break, so they only played football for a while each time. That was it. In the future, they would not have football anymore. Children's sadness was the purest and most contagious. Even Xia Jinyuan was affected by their sadness. It was as if a thick layer of soil had been sprinkled on his heart, and his mood was heavy and oppressive. T6, he shouted in a low voice. How long are you going to stay in a daze? Take the football down. Knowing he had done something bad, the T6 combatant hurriedly bent down and took down the football that had been flattened by his kick. He touched it and said in embarrassment, "What should we do, Captain? This. There's no way to fix this." He was on the verge of tears. Xia Jinyuan took the soccer ball and took a look at it. There was a big hole in the tattered soccer ball that could not be fixed at all. But where could he get a soccer ball now? In a store? Was there any other store here that sold soccer balls? Chapter 52:20. He raised his foot and kicked the T6 combatant's foot cover. Why don't you take a look at what shoes you're wearing? You're wearing combat boots to play football. Why don't you twist your head off and use it as a football? The boy standing in front walked over step by step. Finally, he stood 2 to 3 meters away from the armored vehicle and spoke in the language of the Bassa tribe. Can you give me the football? We only have one football. Don't take it away, okay? Xia Jinyuan and the T6 combatant did not understand, but Bai he could. He translated the boy's words, and several of the Snowfield Brigade's Special Forces soldiers felt their hearts ache. Even though they had been through hundreds of battles, crossed the line between life and death countless times, and witnessed countless casualties, when they heard the boy say, "Don't take it away, okay?" No matter how tough their hearts were, they still cracked. Xia Jinyuan solemnly held the completely unplayable football with both hands and walked to the boy's side. Bai He, who could act as an interpreter, followed behind him. "I'm very sorry that we broke your football. Give me 3 days, and I'll definitely find a way to compensate you with a brand new football." Bai He translated at the same time and told the little boy. After that, he added, "Don't be afraid, we're Chinese peacekeeping soldiers. We'll never hurt you." The boy carefully took the football. When he saw the big hole in the football, the sadness on his tanned face made Xia Jinyuan feel guilty. "We'll definitely compensate you with a new football. Please wait for me here in 3 days, okay?" Perhaps it was because Bai He could speak the language of their tribe, but the boy, whose eyes were full of fear, replied softly, "No, no, thank you. I can ask my mother to fill in some fabric and sew it back together. It can still play football." If this was China, it wouldn't matter if the football was broken. If it was broken, they could just replace it with a new one. Where were there no footballs for sale? Supermarkets, stationery stores, wholesale markets. There were footballs for sale everywhere, so it wasn't considered precious at all. However, in the eyes of the Libyan boy, the football in his hands was the most precious thing. Even if it was broken, he would find a way to use it again. Without giving Xia Jinyuan another chance to speak, he ran away with the football in his arms, waving and cheering loudly as he ran. It didn't matter if the football was broken, as long as it was returned to them. The scattered children all ran over to surround the boy. The boy, who got the football back, was like a returning hero who accepted the praise of his friends. The T6 combatant smacked his head hard. "Q King, I'll definitely find a brand new football to compensate them. We'll compensate them in 3 days. Xia Jinyuan glanced at the remorseful T6 player and said coldly, "Let's settle the matter with the Beisi reporters first, then we'll look for the football." "Understood." The T6 combatant nodded. They boarded the armored vehicle and continued forward until they reached a street where there was a huge bomb. At the corner of the street, the British peacekeepers were on guard with their guns. There was not a single Libyan citizen nearby. Seeing the Chinese peacekeepers jump down from the armored vehicle, a British peacekeeper trotted over. The person who met Xia Jinyuan was Major David from the British side. He was well equipped, and those who didn't know him would think that he was about to go to the battlefield. When he saw Xia Jinyuan, he reached out his hand and said warmly, "Hello, Chinese soldier. It's a pleasure to meet you." "Hello, Major David. It's a pleasure to meet you." Xia Jinyuan shook his hand. "I heard that you already have some information. Can you tell us now? After all, the sooner we act, the sooner we can rescue the missing reporters." The sooner they rescued the Beisi reporters, the sooner they could find a new football to compensate the group of children. Major David was very happy. "Of course, I can tell you all the clues we know. Our goals are the same, so I hope we can have a pleasant cooperation." The British soldiers were very efficient this time. Major David said to a soldier beside him, "Please give me a pen and paper first. I need to draw a rough picture of the situation inside for you." The last sentence was said to the Chinese soldier. The British soldier still had to run back to get the pen and paper. K7 quickly took out the pen and paper from the armored vehicle and handed them to Major David. "Oh, thank you. You're really well prepared." Major David smiled as he took the pen and paper. Soon, he drew a picture of a building and the interior of the building. When Xia Jinyuan saw it, his eyes darkened slightly. "Why does this look like a base that has been used for special purposes? This is a nightclub specially for soldiers to have fun. The 6 reporters went missing here. The entire nightclub only has one entrance and exit, which is the door you see in front of you. This is a double-opening electronic iron door. Once there is an emergency situation, the management of the nightclub will immediately inform his staff to close the door. After entering the gate, there is a nearly 50-meter walkway. There are nightclub staff on both sides of the walkway. Usually, there are about 10 people guarding the walkway. After the walkway, there is a disco. There are all kinds of people there. The nightclub's hired thugs and staff are also there. Major David described it in detail. It seemed that he had been there many times. Xia Jinyuan glanced at him, and Major David also looked over. Then, he explained with a smile, "You know that we are under a lot of pressure. Occasionally, we need some entertainment to relax ourselves. I think that as men, you should understand." "I understand." Xia Jinyuan nodded with a smile, indicating that he understood but did not approve. It was obvious that Xia Jinyuan did not sound sincere. In order to save his image, Major David had to explain again. "Of course, when we went there, we all wore loose clothes so that the girls wouldn't recognize us." Xia Jinyuan raised his eyebrows. "Well, I believe that you will hide your identities well. So, what's next? Are there any other clues?" "Yes, of course. Next, there are more important clues." Major David felt that no matter how much he explained, the Chinese soldiers would not be interested. He shrugged and continued, "This is a larger disco. After passing through the disco, there is a bar counter. Behind the bar counter, there are 2 doors. One leads to the restaurant area of the bar counter, and the other is a secret door that provides some special services." Speaking of this, Major David raised his head and looked at Xia Jinyuan again. Should he also explain what special service was? This group of Chinese soldiers. It seems that they have never been to the largest nightclub in the southern district for fun. Could it be that they have never needed to satisfy a man's physical needs? Xia Jinyuan saw him pause and looked up. His handsome face was painted with foam, and he looked a little puzzled. "What? Is there a problem here?" He did not need to explain. "Oh no. I just wanted to tell you that behind the bar counter is a wall. We have always suspected that there are weapons hidden in the wall." Major David, who did not want to explain too much, heaved a sigh of relief and quickly returned to the main topic. "Because I found 3 surveillance cameras here. In addition to the bartender, there are 2 people guarding the bar counter from time to time. Except for those who need to provide service, they can enter the secret door behind the bar counter. Those who just want to drink and relax can't enter." Chapter 52:21. It had to be said that Major David was very familiar with the layout of the night market. It could be seen that he usually went there often. Only those who frequented the night market would know so much about it. For those who did not go, such as Xia Jinyuan and the other Chinese soldiers, this was the first time they had heard of the night market. The T6 combatant leaned over to V8 and whispered, "A few days ago, I even heard that a certain country's peacekeeping captain brought his soldiers out to have some fun. Damn, I thought some country was deliberately trying to smear our country's reputation. TSK. Looks like I was too naive. So it really does exist." It was not only the British soldiers who went out to have fun and satisfy their personal need. There had been international reports of soldiers from some countries going out to have fun. As long as it was a consensual transaction, there would be no coercion. The higher-ups would turn a blind eye to it. When the peacekeepers in the war zone faced the bloodiest scenes, their mental state would be at its peak. They did need to relax occasionally, but out of humanity, they would not pursue the matter. Unless something happened, such as a forced transaction, then the seriousness of the problem would be huge. They would be condemned internationally, and depending on the severity of the situation, they would be directly sent to military court. The Chinese soldiers who always remembered the 3 main rules of discipline and the 8 points of caution would always be strict with themselves, regardless of whether they were at home or abroad. They would never smear their country's reputation. Discipline was the most basic professional quality of a soldier. V8, who was in charge of guarding the perimeter, said calmly, "You've been listening to too much gossip recently. Be careful that you don't become the gossip of others one day." He vaguely reminded the T6 combatant to keep his mouth shut, talk less, and listen more. "I've always been the one asking about other people's matters. Do you think it's possible for others to ask about me?" The T6 combatant raised his chin and was very confident in himself. He cherished his military uniform very much and would not allow himself to make any mistakes, let alone smear his country's reputation. As for gossip, he knew the rules of confidentiality by heart. He would not leak a word of it even if he was beaten to death. When Z7, who was in charge of large-scale security, heard that, he said with a half-smile, "When we enter the night market later, don't be seduced by the girls there." "Bullshit. I have a wife. I'm very loyal," the T6 combatant retorted. He firmly believed that he would not make a mistake of principle. If he could not even handle such a small matter, could he still be considered a man? Z7 laughed mischievously. "Girls like you. The more you refuse, the more interested they are. The more they want to challenge and conquer you. As for you, if you obey them a little, they probably won't be interested in you." "You want to seduce me into making a mistake? You're so evil." T6 saw through Z7's evil intentions at a glance. He was full of evil thoughts and was really not a good person. He rolled his eyes at Z7 in disdain. "A playboy like you would only have a problem if you had 17 or 18 girlfriends. That's where you're wrong. I've been through a lot now. I've already seen the true nature of the world. I no longer have any desires. No matter how passionate a girl is in front of me, I'll only treat her as a block of wood." Z7 smiled, indicating that he could withstand the test. The T6 combatant wanted to retort, but the White Crane said calmly, "It's time to get down to business." They stopped relaxing before a fierce battle. Everyone became solemn. Their auras changed in the blink of an eye, becoming suffused with a cold chill. Major David drew the last few strokes on the paper. "I suspect that this is a control room. For example, the power supply and the engine room are all here. I think we can now discuss how to sneak into the innermost part of the nightclub to find the reporters." Chapter 52-22. Xia Jinyuan took the floor plan that had been drawn. Major David's drawing skills were very good and the entire floor plan was very clear. He had even drawn out the possible exits and confirmed exit. Well, Major David, who usually went to the nightclub, was really helpful this time. After some arrangements, both sides confirmed their positions. 15 minutes later, Xia Jinyuan took the floor plan and returned to his comrades to arrange the next battle plan for the Chinese side. They were divided into two battle plans, A and B. A was to confirm that the missing Gulf Coast reporters were indeed at the nightclub. B was to confirm that the missing Gulf Coast reporters were not at the nightclub. There are about 12 visible surveillance cameras in the nightclub. There are 2 hidden cameras at the bar counter. After entering through the hidden secret door, there will also be cameras. They will be responsible for destroying the computer room. After confirming that there are no mistakes, 2 of our team members and 2 of their team members will enter the secret door first. At this point, Xia Jinyuan paused slightly and reminded the 2 team members who entered the secret door. After entering the secret door, you might see something similar to a married couple. Don't be scared like a country bumpkin. Married couple. Married couple. T6 held back his laughter. Wasn't it just that? How elegant of him to say it. Xia Jinyuan glanced at him and his gaze fell on Z7 and G3. He continued, Z7 and G3 will enter the secret door in pairs. V8 will keep an eye on the computer room. They will send 2 people into the computer room to destroy all the equipment. It would be more appropriate to arrange for a guy who was married at a young age to enter the secret door. By T6, find a high point and keep an eye on the surroundings. Once you find something wrong, inform us immediately and create chaos. K7 and I will hide in the dark and provide support at any time. Major David's soldiers are waiting outside in the car. Once Plan A is implemented and the 6 reporters are rescued, they will immediately retreat with the reporters. We will cooperate with the soldiers who entered the nightclub with them to retreat and create chaos. Do you all understand? Understood. The 7 of them answered in unison. They had their own duties and worked together to fight side by side many times. As long as the mission was clear, everything would be clear. Now, there was an important problem. They had to change their uniforms. It was easy to get changed. Every time he went out on patrol, he would bring plain clothes with him to prevent any special situations from happening. Sometimes, if you wore a combat uniform and a blue helmet, your identity would be known no matter where you stood. In that case, you had to disguise yourself well. For example, he had to disguise himself when he entered the nightclub at night. This was a special nightclub. Few people came and went from Libya. Most of them were foreigners, and there were even some Asians. Major David led a few soldiers into the nightclub and started playing. The nightclub wasn't big, and there weren't many people. They sat around the simple wooden tables in 2s and 3s, and ordered a few beers to relax. Even a simple relaxation like this was hard to come by in the war-torn zone. It was like a different world compared to the outside world. Outside, the flames of war were everywhere, and people had no way to make a living. Here, at least there was a glass of beer to drink. Even if the price was sky-high, people would still be willing to drink it. There was no red light, nor was there any noisy DJ music that filled every corner. There was only a 15 or 16-year-old Libyan girl standing in the center of the nightclub, playing a broken violin. It could be seen that before the war broke out, this little girl was from a well-off family. Her parents had money to spare for her to learn musical instruments. Chapter 52-23. The Libyan girl, who was about 15 or 16 years old, should be of mixed blood. Her typical dark skin tone was slightly yellow. She did not look like a pure Libyan at first glance. Even her eyes were green, very beautiful and big. Xia Jinyuan glanced at her and glanced at the shabby violin in her hand. She played well, but the strings were not tuned properly, so the sound quality was a bit off. A group of Libyans sat cross-legged in the corner of the mottled wall, waiting for customers to choose from. They did not dare to take the initiative to greet them. This was the rule. Whoever dared to break the rule would disappear the next day, never to return to the nightclub where they could survive. The bar was also very simple. It was made of cement and surrounded by a circle of cheap plastic-colored lights. Xia Jinyuan walked to the bar, glanced at the liquor cabinet, and ordered 2 cans of expensive beer. On the other side, a few Libyan boys were dancing their folk dance. It was passionate, bold, and full of joy. Applause and whistles rang out. Someone threw the money directly to the ground. A slightly older Libyan boy hurriedly picked it up and grabbed it tightly. When he picked up a coin, someone raised a foot and stepped on his palm, crushing it mercilessly. It was very painful, but the boy looked up with a bright smile on his face. He kept saying "thank you" to the foreign man who deliberately stepped on his hand. It was only a 5-cent coin, and his income was only $1 per night. $5 was very important to him. The foreign man saw this and could not help but laugh. His ugly face was like a worm that crawled out of a smelly ditch, making people want to vomit. A weak country had no dignity. If they did not even have the dignity of a country, how much dignity would the people of this country have? No one cared how painful the little boy's hand was, and no one cared if the little boy's pride was trampled on. There were too many such things, and after seeing too many of them, one would become numb to it. Xia Jinyuan retracted his gaze and drank a mouthful of beer. He stood up and walked towards the tall and strong man who was still laughing loudly like a pig. Major David, who was sitting at the edge of the bar and drinking beer, saw this and smiled. The Chinese soldiers were trying to create chaos to save the little boy, so that it would be easier for them to take action. That was a good idea. Picking up a glass half filled with whiskey, David walked toward the Liabi girls, who were sitting cross-legged in the corner. They were ready, he thought. On the other side, Xia Jinyuan's shoulder bumped into the other party, causing the beer in his hand to spill. The foreign man, whose shoe was pressed against the back of the boy's hand, cursed in an unfriendly manner and reached out to grab Xia Jinyuan's collar. "Damned thing, look at what you've done!" As soon as he opened his mouth, a strong smell of alcohol assaulted their nostrils. This was a guy who had drunk whiskey and was drunk. He was single and liked to stir up trouble. Perhaps he was a mercenary who came to a war-torn country to make a fortune. Xia Jinyuan grabbed the man's wrist and twisted it inwards. "You've been drinking. You need to sober up." With a little more force, the man screamed in pain. After teaching the man a lesson, Xia Jinyuan let go of the drunkard's hand, took out a bill from his pocket, and walked towards the girl who was still playing the violin. The drunkard, whose wrist was in pain, wanted to cause trouble, but two men appeared out of nowhere. One blocked the drunkard's path, and the other clamped the drunkard's wrist, forcing him to leave with a smile on their faces. Chapter 52-24. Just as Xia Jinyuan was about to approach the little girl, the lights suddenly went out. Suddenly, there were a lot of click-click sounds of guns being loaded. After about 5 seconds, the lights came back on and everything went back to normal. Xia Jinyuan handed the money in his hand to the girl and received a deep bow from her. He smiled, drank a mouthful of beer, and returned to the bar counter. A few seconds after the lights went off, a few unfamiliar faces in the nightclub seemed to have left. No one cared whether they had left or not. Everyone was talking about their own things. If they had an idea, they would go to the corner and pull a girl they liked into the secret door. "Q King, the surveillance cameras have been destroyed." "Okay." Xia Jinyuan, who was walking through the crowd, replied and saw David leading a Liabian girl towards the secret door at the bar counter. Z7 and G3, who were in charge of entering the secret door to look for the missing reporters, were nowhere to be seen. In just a few seconds, they had already sneaked in through the secret door. The girl who played the violin had finished her song. She bowed again and again to express her gratitude. Then she picked up the money thrown to her around. The amount varied, but she was very happy. Xia Jinyuan's gaze swept over the violin she was carefully holding in her hands. As he lowered his eyebrows and drank, a trace of coldness flashed across his eyes. Inside, Z7 and G3 had already met up with the 4 British soldiers who had sneaked in before them. With Z7 and G3 in charge of the rear, the 4 British soldiers quickly pushed forward until they reached the end. At the end of the corridor, there was a locked iron door. The British soldiers quickly put on a silencer for their guns and planned to use bullets to break the lock. This was a closed corridor. If they spoke loudly, there would be an echo. If they used bullets to break the lock, even if the gun was equipped with a silencer, it would still make a lot of noise. G3 quickly stepped forward to stop them. "We can explain in a better way." Picking locks was not a problem for G3. 5 minutes later, Major David, who was purely chatting this time, suddenly had a flash of joy in his eyes. He sat up on the bed, that was only covered with a few wooden planks and a bedsheet. They had found the missing reporters. Xia Jinyuan put the half-empty beer can back on the bar counter, got up lazily, and started counting from 10 to 1 in his mind, waiting for the right time to act. By he and the T6 combatants, who had chosen the highest vantage point, had already reached for the pistols they had brought with them. Perhaps it wouldn't be long before they would have to use their good friends to save their lives. V8 stared at one of the surveillance screens until Z7 and G3 appeared. Without hesitation, he destroyed all the electronic equipment in the nightclub. The 2 consecutive power outages did not surprise the drinkers. In this place, it would be strange if the electricity was on throughout the night. It was normal for it to stop for a while. Sometimes it would stop, and it would be equally normal to not have it for the whole night. It's a little strange that a nightclub is equipped with a set of relatively advanced surveillance equipment. V8 said in a low voice as he came out of the machine room. He lifted his leg and stepped over one of the thugs who had been taken care of. There are fighters and surveillance equipment. Looks like it's not a simple nightclub. I'll delete all the records of us entering the nightclub so as not to leave any traces behind. V8 was very thorough in this regard. After deleting all the records, there would not be any traces left behind. Xia Jinyuan groped his way to a corner in the dark. The moment the power went out, the little girl playing the violin, whom he had been keeping a close eye on, reacted abnormally quickly. Several beams of light suddenly lit up in several corners of the nightclub. The nightclub staff lit candles, and the little girl standing in the corner played the violin again. The sharp and urgent sound of the violin seemed to be conveying some kind of message. Chapter 52:25. The sound of the violin was too sharp and made people feel uncomfortable. It was as if something was pressing down on their hearts and could make them collapse at any time. Put down that stupid thing in your hands. It's awful. Someone couldn't stand it anymore and yelled at the girl playing the violin. He picked up the beer can in his hand and threw it at the girl. The sound of the zither was still sharp and hurried. More and more people couldn't help but frown. There were also some people with sharp minds who felt that something was wrong. They looked around uneasily. Some people slowly got off their high stools and gave their companions a look, intending to leave early. The order in the nightclub was getting out of control. Most people were annoyed by the sound of the girl playing the violin. The electronic door beside the bar that had been closed all this time opened with a bang. A group of black men rushed out and looked around the nightclub with unfriendly eyes. Their sudden appearance made the already restless nightclub even more chaotic. In the corner, someone fired 3 shots at the ceiling, and the atmosphere in the nightclub suddenly became tense. Some people were so shocked that the beer can in their hands fell to the ground and unfinished beer flowed out. However, they weren't too afraid. It was normal to hear gunshots here. The only abnormal thing was that something seemed to be happening in the only place where people could drink tonight. The bright candles went out and countless flashlights lit up the nightclub as if it was daytime. The girl playing the violin put down her violin and looked at the nightclub with a gloomy and cold gaze. It didn't look like a girl's gaze at all. Xia Jinyuan looked at the scene calmly with a sneer in his eyes. Armed men. These were armed men under the control of the government. The country was in chaos and the people were suffering, but there were still officials taking advantage of the situation to make money. A few Libyan men who came to have fun took out their guns. When they saw the guys who suddenly rushed out, fear flashed in their eyes. They didn't know there was a door behind the bar. There was also a group of people who had already put their hands on their waists and were communicating with each other through their eyes. Xia Jinyuan glanced at them and looked up. He casually lowered his ears and said in a low voice, "There should be a lot of excitement tonight. Don't be in a hurry to act. Major David, how are things on your end?" The reporters inside had been found, but they hadn't come out yet. There was another wave of gunmen outside. Oh no, there were 2 waves of gunmen. For now, it was safest to stay in the secret door. Inside the room, Major David replied to Xia Jinyuan helplessly, "If I told you that this place isn't good at all, would you believe me? I think the reporter we rescued is a problem." The biggest problem was the female reporter with the Asian face. She had a fiery temper. Even though she was still in danger, she still stood out to criticize them. She was actually a regular at the nightclub. Major David felt a headache coming on. Being a reporter was a very unlovable profession. It was a disaster to meet a reporter who talked like God and thought he was the most capable and the smartest. Outside, Xia Jinyuan's intuition told him that the trouble Major David was talking about was likely to be the female reporter from Beisi. Keeping a close eye on the surroundings, he could only express his deep sympathy and said that there was nothing he could do. The situation outside is a little complicated. If you can evacuate normally, tell us to retreat as soon as possible. After informing Major David of the situation outside, Xia Jinyuan actually hoped that they could evacuate as per normal. The sooner they left, the better, in case something unexpected happened. Chapter 52-26. Major David felt that retreating immediately was the right choice. However, they still needed the people outside to keep a close eye on them in case anyone tried to break through the secret door. Leave the outside to us, Xia Jinyuan said seriously. You just need to get them out of here safely. Their mission would be completed once they rescued the 3 Gulf Coast reporters, and the higher-ups would be able to give Gulf Coast an immediate answer. Major David still had a lot of faith in the Chinese soldiers. Even though they were all in the same area, the Chinese soldiers were known for their strict discipline. In the past, he did not have a good impression of the Chinese and their soldiers and thought that the soldiers trained by a poor and backward country would definitely be very bad. However, it turned out that he was overthinking it. The Chinese soldiers were really soldiers. Xia Jinyuan did not know how difficult it was to deal with the female reporters from Gulf Coast, so he left this problem to Major David to deal with. Major David had hinted from the beginning that they would rescue all the reporters and that the Chinese soldiers only needed to provide assistance. Xia Jinyuan knew what the other party was thinking. Fame and fortune were right in front of him, and they were even rescuing the reporters. If Major David wanted to perform well, then he would let him perform well. The special forces of the Snowfield Brigade, who usually did not like to be in the limelight, were more than happy to do so. After cutting off the communication, Xia Jinyuan and the men who were truly confused and had only come out to drink to relieve stress squeezed together. He and the T6 soldiers also moved closer to Xia Jinyuan. A few of the disguised British soldiers kept a close eye on the secret door behind the bar counter. Once the armed men tried to enter through the secret door, they would have to take action. A Libyan man strode up to the little girl who was playing the violin. He lowered his head and asked a few questions. The little girl's cold eyes swept across the nightclub as she answered his questions. The man who was listening to her had a serious expression on his face. Occasionally, he would raise his eyes and look around with a murderous look in his eyes. Damn it! What the hell is going on? A slightly drunk Libyan man shouted and staggered towards the light that was piercing his eyes. Damn it, turn off the things in your hands. My eyes are very uncomfortable, they're very uncomfortable. Xia Jinyuan looked at the other party's muscular arms and then looked at the other party's eyes. His cold black eyes could not help but narrow slightly. He was pretending to be drunk. He had only taken a few steps when someone pointed a rifle at the drunkard's chest. Sir, there's a problem. We need your cooperation. Please stand or sit down. What's wrong? Why do you need my cooperation? This is just a place to drink. Are you here to drink? The drunkard seemed to be very drunk. One of his fingers kept staring at the shoulder of the man holding the spear. He roared again and again until his saliva flew everywhere. Still not satisfied, he raised his hand and threw an unfinished bottle of whiskey onto the cement floor. Bang! Crash! The thick whiskey bottle was smashed, and the transparent glass shards flew everywhere. The girls squatting in the corner screamed, causing a small commotion. You're drunk, sir. You need to sober up. The man with the gun pushed the barrel harder into the drunkard's chest. If you don't sit down, my bullet might wake you up. The warning and threat were all used together, but it was useless against the drunkard. He and T6 approached and stood behind Xia Jinyuan. He said in a low voice, "The entrance has been sealed. Take the stairs to the second floor and retreat from there." But we have to deal with the people guarding the bar first. Chapter 52-27. Xia Jinyuan, who was looking around, glanced in the direction of the bar counter and the spiral staircase leading to the second floor. He smiled and said, "There's no hurry. There are people who want to get out earlier than us. 3 o'clock and 7 o'clock respectively. These two groups of people are more anxious than us." Hearing this, Bai He and the T6 combatants looked up slightly. Xia Jinyuan said calmly, "You guys take care of the people on the left, and I'll take care of the people on the right. The sooner we leave, the sooner we'll be done." Who knew which big shot in the Liabi government was behind the nightclub? The sooner they left, the sooner they would leave. They didn't want to make things too complicated, lest the government had to step in. Oh right, there was also a reporter from Bay City who had bigger ideas about the country. He always felt that there were a lot of conspiracy theories in the country, so he had to be on guard against people like her. He was originally here to save people, but she turned around and attacked him instead. This was a possibility. Previously, when Major David said that they would be responsible for saving people and that the Chinese side only needed to cooperate, Xia Jinyuan agreed without hesitation. In fact, he had already been guarding against the reporters from Bay City. The drunkard who was causing trouble was probably not afraid of death. He was not afraid of having a gun pointed at his heart as a warning. Instead, he grabbed the gun pointed at his chest with one hand and shouted in the local language, "Come on, bastard, shoot me if you dare." The man with the gun obviously did not expect the other party to be so fearless as to snatch the gun from his hand. And he obviously did not intend to shoot the drunkard to death. He just wanted to scare the drunkard and also scare the people in the nightclub who wanted to take the opportunity to cause trouble. It looked very peaceful here, but once something that could trigger the violent tendencies in people's bodies was triggered, the entire nightclub would undoubtedly be in chaos. The drunkard's fearless behavior caused a lot of people to kick up a fuss. They whistled, shouted, and even slammed the table at the people who suddenly rushed out of nowhere with guns. It was as though none of them were afraid of death, as though they were not afraid of bullets hitting their bodies. After seeing so many guns, they seemed to have become bolder. The unforeseen event happened very quickly. The man with the gun flew into a rage from the humiliation and put his finger on the trigger. As long as he pulled the trigger, the drunkard would be killed by him. However, before the other party could make a move, the drunkard who was causing trouble suddenly pointed his gun upwards and pulled the trigger. Bullets flew towards the ceiling with a bang 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 sound. Amidst the gunshots, the cheers and shouts became louder. It was as if what they heard was not gunshots, but fireworks used to celebrate. The girls who were squatting in the corner covered their ears. They were so scared that they didn't dare to look anymore. The more timid girls bit their own arms to prevent themselves from speaking. The little girl who was playing the violin raised her hand and pointed at a group of people. The man who was talking to her looked in the direction of her finger, and his expression changed. His eyes flashed with obvious disgust, as if he knew these people. On the other side, the drunkard who was holding the gun punched the man in the nose. The group of people pointed at by the little girl instantly took out their guns and shot at the people who rushed out of the electronic door. This time, the jeering turned into screams, and the nightclub was in chaos. Xia Jinyuan saw the little girl who was playing the violin open the cover. She took out a small pistol and shot the back of the man's head who was facing her. Bang! She only fired once, and it was not at all abrupt in the dense gunfire. The man who was shot in the back of the head was still talking to the little girl a second ago. The next second, his body fell to the ground and he was shot dead. Chapter 52-28. Why was the sound of the violin not very accurate? The reason was simple. There was a pistol stuck to the violin, and the pistol affected the sound quality of the violin. Xia Jinyuan, who had seen it clearly, did not approach the little girl. In this place, even 5- or 6-year-old children could shoot and kill, so it was not strange for a 14-year-old girl to shoot and kill. The slightly strange thing was that the little girl should be from the nightclub, so why would she shoot at people from the nightclub? Also, did she deliberately play the sharp and unpleasant violin sound just now to make the people hiding behind the electronic door show themselves, so that the other group could take care of them all at once? A few questions flashed through Xia Jinyuan's mind. Without stopping, he and the T6 soldier rushed toward the spiral iron staircase that led to the second floor. The V8 soldier, who had exited the engine room, and the 2 British soldiers, heard the gunshots from the nightclub. His expression turned serious as he stopped in his tracks and asked in a low voice, "What happened?" The operation did not mention shooting in the nightclub, only retreating to cover the retreat. "Someone is causing trouble, so we should take the opportunity to leave." Xia Jinyuan, who was bending down to avoid being hit by bullets, replied, "Inform the main station immediately once we get out. There may be internal strife within the Liabi government." The nightclub was under the control of an official, and this was not a secret in the Liabi government. Otherwise, it would not have been able to survive in the midst of war and provide good wine and women for people to enjoy. Now that someone had come out to cause trouble, and it was after the little girl had deliberately played a violin sound that sounded like a police report to lure people out, it was obvious that the people targeting the nightclub were well aware of the layout of the nightclub. They had bribed the little girl in advance to immediately inform them once they discovered that there was a problem. That was why there was such a big raid tonight. The Liabi government was not peaceful, and Xia Jinyuan had always known that the little girl had done all sorts of things just now. The man who had been killed by the little girl looked at the group of people who had opened fire as if he knew them. With so many details strung together, Xia Jinyuan's first thought was that the internal strife within the Liabi government had begun to intensify. If that was the case, it would be another big mess. The gunshots in the nightclub were very chaotic, and the temporary flashlight source had already been extinguished. Xia Jinyuan, who was rushing toward the staircase, found his target and quickly took care of it. Done. He and the T6 soldier brought up the rear. Xia Jinyuan held onto the handrail with one hand and quickly rushed up the stairs. Sounds of footsteps could be heard from above. They didn't want to fight head-on. They just wanted to retreat quietly. Major David's voice came. His tense voice was now particularly relaxed. "My brothers, you need to come out quickly. We've already left the nightclub. We're just waiting for you." The gunshots. "You are here to maintain peace. Why are you turning a blind eye now?" "Ma'am, we don't have to rush over every time we hear gunshots in order to maintain peace. We also need to know why there were gunshots, who are the 2 parties involved, and so on before we can take action." "Ma'am, I think you must be tired. It's not safe here, so you should leave with my soldiers as soon as possible." Major David, who was trying to maintain his gentlemanly demeanor, tried to persuade her and maintain a polite smile on his face. Chapter 52-29. Major David was trying his best to maintain a smile on his face, but he was a gentleman. Especially in front of a woman, he could not lose his gentlemanly demeanor. No matter how displeased he was, Major David maintained a polite smile and politely invited the Asian lady to get into the car. "All right, madam, you should get in the car. You have been missing for too long. Your colleagues and your country are very worried about you. Leave the maintenance of peace to us soldiers. I will leave the reporting of the cruelty of war to you. You and I will return to our posts, okay?" He tried his best to persuade her patiently, but this female reporter surnamed Chern from Bay C did not seem to appreciate it. She was quite good-looking and had a sexy body. She was not too tall or short, at most 1.65 meters. However, her chin was raised a little high, and her entire person exuded a sharp arrogance. "From your accent, I can tell which country you're from." "That's right, I'm here to report on the cruelty of war. Similarly, I can also reveal the true faces of people like you. Everyone will see that you only know how to enjoy yourselves here." Gunshots have already sounded. As a reporter, I will not retreat because of this. I will do my best to report on every battlefield here. I will let the world know that the people who suffer the most in war are always the citizens of this country. And you can choose to leave, because I don't have the right to let you stay. But I will definitely report everything I see truthfully, including your departure. His words were indeed sharp and even threatening, and Major David's face instantly darkened. To hell with the gentlemanly demeanor. He really wanted to beat her up. "Madam, please get in the car immediately." Major David no longer maintained his courtesy because he realized that there was no way to maintain it in front of this reporter. His politeness was seen as cowardice. Reporter Chen was furious. "Are you forcing me to do this? Are you trying to restrict my personal freedom? I will sue you. I protest." No one cared about Reporter Chen's protest. The gunshots were still ringing in their ears. Getting her out of here quickly was the best choice. "Major, we should leave this problem to the 2 Chinese soldiers who came out with us," a British soldier said unhappily. He had heard everything clearly and was very angry. "The 2 who came out with us? Chinese soldiers? Chinese soldiers?" Reporter Chen, who was using body language to express his anger, paused, as if he had caught a big piece of news. His eyes lit up as he asked the British soldier who was expressing his dissatisfaction, "Chinese soldier? Do you mean that Chinese soldiers are also at this nightclub? Where are the Chinese soldiers? Where is it? Why didn't she see it? Chinese soldiers appearing at a nightclub? Big news." She had a feeling that as long as she reported the news of Chinese soldiers hanging around nightclubs, it would definitely cause the biggest storm. Looking around, Reporter Chen wished he could install 2 light bulbs in his eyes to see if he could find the 2 Chinese soldiers who came out together in the darkness. Not far away, G3 and Z7, who had rescued a reporter, said that they didn't see the screaming, and crazy reporter. There was still no news from K7, so Han Fei had no idea how he was doing. Major David didn't want to talk to this crazy reporter anymore. He waved his hand and ordered coldly, "Take her away. If she doesn't cooperate, drag her into the car." Chapter 52:30. Major David was really at the mercy of this kind of self-righteous reporter who thought he was very powerful. "Yes, Major." The soldier responded and forcefully dragged Reporter Chen into the car. How could Reporter Chen leave? How could she let go of such a big piece of news? Her angry expression turned into a fight. "Let go of your hand. I'm a reporter. I have the right to report here. Let go of me. I'm warning you, don't grab me again. I'll sue you for molestation and illegal imprisonment." No one paid any attention to a reporter who had lost her mind. Major David rubbed his aching head and contacted the Chinese soldiers who had yet to appear. I'm David. What's the situation? Please answer me if you hear me." "The situation isn't good. I saved a little boy along the way." Xia Jinyuan answered David. He quickly picked up a rifle and fired. The armed men who rushed out from the end of the corridor on the second floor fell one by one. He and the T6 combatants brought up the rear. The shooting ended very quickly and killed a total of 6 people. "All right, little guy. You can take me to the room where your parents are being held now." Xia Jinyuan pulled out the little boy who was huddled in the door frame. He was a Chinese boy who had just arrived and could speak good Mandarin. His family's business specialized in providing alcohol to the nightclub. They had come over today to deliver the last batch of alcohol to the nightclub. According to the rules, the people behind the nightclub would arrange for people to send the family of 3 out of Liabi. Unfortunately, the people behind the nightclub went back on their word and detained the family of 3. The reason for that was simple. After the 3 of them left Liaby, the nightclub would no longer provide alcohol. What kind of nightclub was a nightclub without alcohol? What money could they make from it? The little boy was locked up alone and was very happy. He was saved by Xia Jinyuan, who was about to leave. The little boy was very smart. When he saw the people who broke in and killed the people guarding him, he immediately asked for help. During the execution of the mission, especially at the end of the retreat, there were sudden changes. This was dangerous for all the combat personnel. The Snowfield Brigade's special forces, who could completely ignore them, ultimately chose to stay behind. This was because the little boy realized that they were only taking him away. He cried loudly, "I want my father, I want my mother." He cried in slightly accented Mandarin. Here came the problem. Should they save a second-generation transmigrator? Was there a choice? There was no choice. They could only save him. Fortunately, the situation below was chaotic enough. Otherwise, there would be no way to save them. After taking down the militants who were supporting them, the 3 of them directly used their bullets to blast open the locked iron door. In this place, as long as there was a door, most of them were made of iron because they were sturdy. She left several bullet holes in the iron door. Sparks flew as the iron lock was broken. The rusty iron door was kicked open by the T6 combatant with a clang. After kicking the door open, the T6 combatant quickly dodged to the side and shone his flashlight into the dark room. There was no one there except for a large, sturdy cabinet against the wall. The T6 combatant, who had quickly sneaked into the room to take a look around, retreated and said in English to his comrades who were on guard outside, "There's no one here." The little boy, who still remembered that he had been separated from his parents in this room, understood what she meant. Sandwiched in Xia Jinyuan's arms, he cried, "Daddy, Mommy! Dong! Dong! Woo! Woo!" The sound of something crashing came from the room, and there was a faint sound of someone struggling. The little boy's crying stopped abruptly, and he suddenly burst into tears. "Dad, Mommy!" There was someone in the cupboard, but no one could see the person inside from the outside. Chapter 5231. Xia Jinyuan and the T6 combatant cautiously approached the wooden cabinet while he stood guard on both sides of the corridor. V8's voice came from the hidden earpiece. "I'm V8. I've successfully escaped from the vent." Xia Jinyuan gently and slowly opened the cabinet door. 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds. When the cabinet door was fully opened, Xia Jinyuan and the T6 combatants saw a man and a woman huddled together with their hands and feet tied, eyes blindfolded, and mouths gagged. The 2 of them could already feel the tightly locked cabinet door open. They started moaning and struggling even harder. "Daddy, Mommy!" The little boy also saw them and shouted loudly in surprise. The couple, who had heard their son's cries, instantly wetted the blindfold with their tears. The 2 of them, whose hands and feet were tied, were so excited that they fell out of the cabinet together. When Xia Jinyuan saw this, he knew he had found them. They were the new Chinese immigrants and the little boy's parent. The T6 combatant took out a small but sharp dagger and aimed it at the door. Xia Jinyuan, who was half squatting down, said in English, "Don't move. I'll untie you now." The couple, who had fallen out of the cabinet, nodded in unison. Their tears of joy did not stop. They could even feel their son's soft hands caressing their faces as he kept calling out, "Daddy, Mommy." He used a small knife to quickly cut the ropes binding the couple's feet. After that, without needing to ask him to move, the couple quickly took off the blindfolds covering their eyes and took out the cloth strips that were gagged in their mouth. The mother hugged her son tightly and cried loudly. The husband hugged his wife and son and cried loudly. After experiencing the greatest ups and downs in their lives, they were finally reunited. After experiencing the greatest ups and downs in their lives, the men were also crying sorrowfully. Xia Jinyuan did not give the couple too much time to cry. Out of professionalism, he verified the couple's identities and confirmed that they were the little boy's biological parents. He spoke quickly and said in a deep voice, "We're not out of danger yet, so if you want to live, you have to listen to my arrangements and keep an eye on us. Also, you have to protect your child. My friend and I might not have time to take care of you anymore. Do you know how to use a gun? Even if you don't, you still need to know how to use the guns in your hands to protect your sons." He didn't even give the couple any time to thank him before he led the family of 3 out of the house. All the supporters had gone to the nightclub, and the 6 of them retreated without a hitch. Finally, there was some movement from K7. He said in a cold and monotonous voice, "The nightclub belongs to Amherst, and the ones who came to cause trouble are soldiers from Ives. Everyone in Liabia knows about their political differences." K7, who had not left, also started to leave. It was faster for him to leave alone, so Xia Jinyuan asked him to meet up with the others on the 2nd floor. Just as K7 went up the spiral staircase to the 2nd floor, the chaotic nightclub suddenly exploded. Someone threw a grenade into the nightclub, and the entire nightclub was engulfed in flames and smoke. Countless screams came from all directions, mixed with screams and gunshot. The scene was so chaotic that it was like hell on earth. The huge impact made K7, who had also gone up to the 2nd floor, instinctively jump to the ground. His comrades' urgent shouts came from the hidden earpiece. "K7, K7, answer immediately if you hear me. Answer immediately if you hear me." It was their captain, Q King. Chapter 52-32. K7, who was lying on the ground, got up calmly and did not forget to pat the dust off his body. "He's not dead. He's still alive. Damn." The T6 combatant, who was so shocked that he broke out in cold sweat, cursed in a low voice. He quickly said, "Don't fucking act cool with me. Get over here. 2nd floor, turn left, 3rd floor." Before he could finish, the T6 combatant, who was staring out the window, cursed even louder. He then contacted G3 and Z7, who were outside. "What's the situation outside?" "A group of people is coming." From where he was, even though it was pitch black outside, he could still see a group of people rushing over from the dilapidated streets in the dim light of the night. G3 and Z7, who were guarding the other exit, which was also the exit they had to retreat to, immediately jumped out of the darkness. Z7 said in a deep voice, "Direction. Fuck. These people are carrying cannons. Retreat." The T6 combatant roared. This fucking looked like they were going to raise the only 4-story building that still looked intact to the ground. K7, who had yet to rendezvous with his comrades, was running wildly. His cold and expressionless face was still expressionless. "You guys retreat. I'll catch up later. Cut the fucking crap. Hurry. We'll wait for you." He cursed. They were sworn brothers, so no matter what, they would never do something like abandon their brothers and leave. The brothers in the Snowfield Brigade would never do something like that. Xia Jinyuan pulled down the curtains and said to the man who was trembling between his thighs, "You're a man. Your wife and child are in your hands to protect. Have some guts. Don't lose your wife and child's lives just because you're scared." This time, Xia Jinyuan spoke in Chinese. This gave the Chinese immigrants some courage. The husband and wife were clearly stunned. They did not know that the people who saved them were Chinese. The wife hugged her son tightly and said in a trembling voice, "Thank you, thank you, thank you so much." In terms of nationality, they were no longer Chinese. They were new immigrants, so these Chinese men could have chosen not to save their family of 3. But not only did they save them, they even allowed them to leave in advance. This was Chinese soldiers. They had to be Chinese soldiers. Only Chinese soldiers would always leave the hope of survival to the people and leave the danger to themselves. You're Chinese soldiers from the peacekeeping force. You must be. The man, whose legs were trembling and he didn't dare to move, grabbed Xia Jinyuan's arm tightly. His voice was trembling with excitement. Xia Jinyuan laughed and said, "Brother, now is not the time to chat. Hurry up and go down. If you're late, you'll really die." At this moment, the man also felt that he had nothing to be afraid of. He took a deep breath and said, "All right. I'm going down now. Let's leave this place alive." The Chinese soldiers had given their lives to his family of 3, so he had to make the best use of his time. In a spurt of energy, the man flipped out of the curtain, then grabbed the curtain cloth tied together with several curtains and began to go down. In fact, he didn't need to do anything. He just needed to hold the curtain tightly to prevent himself from falling. Finally, the man went down. He didn't dare to shout loudly. Hearing the footsteps, he was so nervous that his heart was about to fly out. He quickly caught his son, then his wife, and then a rifle. "Quick, hide! Quick!" The man shielded his wife and child. He hugged them tightly with his arms and bent over to find a place where the family of 3 could hide. Outside, the G3, who was as fast as a wolf running in the night, found a high point. He looked through his binoculars and saw the crowd coming from the east. Anti-government militants, Z7, guard the entrance. Chapter 52-33. Z7, who was guarding the entrance, stared straight ahead. When he saw who it was with his night vision binoculars, he bit down hard on his cheek. His face was as cold as ice as he said, "F***CK, it's not anti-government militants, it's part of the government army that betrayed us." They communicated in English. Major David, who was driving away, felt his heart sink. He pressed on the hidden earpiece and said, "Comrades, retreat quickly. Don't get involved in the battle between the 2 armies. Damn it, part of the government army betrayed us. There must be something wrong with the Liabi government." Reporter Chen, who was struggling in the car, got the latest news from the front line immediately. However, she couldn't get out of the car and send the latest news back to Beisi. No, she had to get out of the car. Panting heavily, she no longer shouted at the top of her lungs. She did not have the strength to shout anymore. Her throat was so hoarse that it hurt, as if there was a fire burning it. Her voice was already hoarse, and if she continued shouting, she was afraid that she would lose her voice. She didn't struggle anymore. She needed to find a chance to get out of the car. Chinese soldiers going in and out of the nightclub and government army betraying us were all top news. She had to find a way to spread the news. And her camera. My camera, where's my camera? Where did my camera go? Stop the car, I lost my camera. I want my camera back. Without a camera, it was useless even if she knew the top news. Reporting needed to be true, and the truth was often conveyed through photos and snippets. She didn't even have a camera. Even if she knew the top news, it was useless. Without evidence, no one would believe her. As a journalist, she knew the importance of evidence and photos. Reporter Chen, who was slapping the bulletproof armored vehicle with both hands, was so angry that she was like a crazy lioness. When her hands hurt, she used her feet to kick the bulletproof armored vehicle. "I want to get off, stop the car, stop the car. You have no right to restrict my personal freedom. You're breaking the law." It was impossible for the car to stop. Major David even urged the soldiers to speed up. He contacted the soldiers in the middle car and told them to speed up and enter the safe zone. Other than Reporter Chen, who was from Beisi, the other 5 were in the middle car. The front car was the breakout car. If there was an accident, it would immediately cover the middle car's safety. The back car was responsible for everyone's safe retreat. Major David was in the car behind them, accompanied by the reporters who gave him a headache. The commotion did not affect his decision-making. As a peacekeeper, He had no right to join the fight between the two armies. He had to leave as soon as possible. As for the guys from the Chinese side, may God bless them to return safely. As soon as the first car turned into an entrance, a huge explosion rang out in front of them. Flames soared into the sky, and rocks and scrap iron were sent flying everywhere. Countless pieces of debris splashed out like rain along with the flames, adding another scar to this war-torn city. Major David, who was still praying for the Chinese soldiers, heard the explosion and saw the raging fire engulfing the surroundings through the windshield. Inside the car, reporter Chen, who was struggling frantically, screamed in fright, "Quick, quick! Get out of the car, get out of the car!" She screamed and grabbed Major David's arm tightly. Her eyes were filled with fire, clearly reflecting her fear. Chapter 52-34. There was a bomb in front of them, and it blew up the vehicles in front of them. There were rebels in front of them. As a reporter, she had to be quick to react. She had to be sensitive to the news, to the development of facts, to the value of the news, and to the ability to escape in the face of danger. Reporter Chen was very good in this area. She was a well-known reporter in Bay City, and she did have some news. Coupled with her ability to create momentum, she became one of the most famous reporters in Bay City. The explosion frightened reporter Chen, and she immediately realized that there must be rebels in front of them. They would only die like the vehicles in front of them. Major David's patience with her completely disappeared at this moment, but he resisted the urge to push her away. He was a soldier, and he couldn't do anything stupid. Major David's face was illuminated by two blazing flames. He was a handsome and gentlemanly British soldier. He had both the fierceness of a soldier and the elegance of a gentleman. The combination of the two qualities made him very charming. However, Major David was no longer as elegant as he used to be. He raised his hand and pressed the hidden headset in his ear. His deep light brown eyes burst with panic and he shouted, "Alan, are you okay? Are you okay? Retreat, retreat, there's an ambush. There's an ambush. Retreat." The voice of the soldier in front of them came from the headset. The wheels rolled over the bumpy street, and they retreated at the fastest speed. The armored vehicle in front of them looked clumsy, but at this time, it turned around the corner quickly and nimbly. God! They almost died just now. Major David heard the voice of his comrade in front of him, and his heart that was about to jump out of his chest fell back to its original place. His heart was beating fast. He took a deep breath and sniffed the smoke in the car. He quickly adjusted his panicked state of mind and said, "Change the retreat route." If they didn't change the retreat route, the three cars would meet God. Major David didn't want to meet God early. He still wanted to return to his country alive. No one didn't want to return to their country alive. Xia Jinyuan and the others also heard the voices of the British soldiers. They were in trouble, but they did not expect Major David to be in trouble as well. K7, who had already rushed out, placed his hands on the edge of the window and leaped down from the second floor like a crane. He was the last to leave the nightclub. The little boy, who was being protected by his parents, hugged his father tightly and said softly, "Dad, when are we going home?" "Soon, baby. Once we leave here, we can go home." The father kissed his young son. Beside him was his wife. Feeling his wife trembling in fear, he leaned over and kissed his wife's hair. "Don't be afraid. We will definitely return home safely. Don't be afraid." With the Chinese soldiers, they would definitely return home safely. Endless gunshots rang out. Bang, bang, bang. It was as if one could still hear the bullets whizzing out, bringing with them the sharp sound of death. The wife, who had carried her son to the war-torn country in a fit of anger, blamed herself deeply. It was all her fault. If it weren't for her willfulness, their family of three wouldn't have been in danger. It was all her fault. It was all her fault. Chapter 5235. The gunshots that could take lives at any moment showed no signs of stopping. The wife hugged her husband's arm and lowered her head. She bit her lower lip and let out a suppressed cry. "Mom, don't be afraid. The uncles will help us get home. We'll see Grandpa and Grandma soon." The little boy heard his mother's sobs. He thought that his mother was afraid and comforted her like a little adult. The couple's tears flowed freely. K7 had already come down. Everyone could retreat. Go. G3, who was guarding the retreat, said in a low voice. They started to gather in one direction from a scattered inverted triangle, including Z7, who was guarding the entrance. Xia Jinyuan, by he T6, V8, K7, and the family of 3 that they rescued made a total of 8 people. After G3 and Z7 met up, they quickly approached Xia Jinyuan. The father hugged his son tightly and kept kissing the child's forehead. He comforted him in a low voice, "Don't be afraid, baby. Don't make a sound. Mom and Dad will protect you. Don't be afraid." He used to be a Chinese. Before he emigrated, he didn't encounter the war at all. He even felt that the war was too far away from him. After he left the country, he joined Liabi because of his family's business. He started the most profitable but also the most dangerous war business. He provided alcohol for the nightclubs in Liabi. Wealth comes from danger. He didn't expect that he would almost lose his wife and child's lives. Hearing the gunshots, the mother who retreated was frightened. She clutched her husband's clothes tightly and touched the child's little hand and face from time to time. She never thought that she would carry the child into Liabi in a fit of anger and almost lose her life. Xia Jinyuan didn't understand the twists and turns between the husband and wife. The most important thing now was to leave. They obviously couldn't leave easily. They were surrounded. He and G3 took turns moving forward. From the dark streets, under the cover of the ruins, they moved away from the nightclub that had become the center of the crossfire. "Let's find a place to catch our breath first, then think of a way to get out." Xia Jinyuan, whose back was pressed against the wall, turned around and glanced at the man who was shielding his wife and children under his arm. The most important thing was to send the 3 of them out. Outside, the traitorous government forces were already exchanging fire. Those who were lucky enough to escape from the nightclub did not manage to escape the bullets of the traitorous government forces. Bullets flew over, and screams rang out continuously. They passed through the chaotic crowd, crawling, squatting, running, and finally made it out of the nightclub alive. However, they did not expect that what awaited them outside was still death. There was nowhere to run and nowhere to hide. The traitorous government forces had obviously made preparations in advance to catch the government off guard. They surged out from several places in the city and started a large-scale war. The location of the nightclub was just a signal for them to start a war. The sky above the city was ablaze, and the peacekeeping forces of various countries entered the first level of alert. The Chinese and British peacekeeping forces were still anxiously waiting for their comrades who went out to rescue the reporters to return. Major David and the others had already abandoned the vehicle. They no longer considered escaping in the vehicle. The large vehicle would become the main target of the rebel army. They destroyed the oil circuit of the vehicle and blew up the vehicle's control system. The expensive armored vehicle became scrap metal that could no longer be driven. This was to prevent it from falling into the hands of the rebel army. They were not far away from Xia Jinyuan, but it would be difficult for them to meet up. Xia Jinyuan brought his family of 3, and Major David brought 6 reporters. Among them, there was a reporter who was extremely uncooperative throughout the entire process. She was also the only woman present. Chapter 5236. Major David pulled out his gun and pointed the muzzle at Reporter Chen's forehead. "Madam, you're making me very angry right now. It's easy for 1 or 2 reporters to die on the battlefield. Are you afraid? Are you afraid now?" Of course, she was afraid. This was the first time Reporter Chern had a gun pointed at her head. She was even more afraid than when she was locked up in a room. After all, he had seen the world. Calming his mind, Reporter Chen's lips trembled as he pretended to be calm. Please remember your identity. Don't stain the blue helmet with blood. Don't insult the word peacekeeping. Yes, reporter. You're right. I have to remember my identity at all times. Otherwise, do you think you'll still be alive? Major David sheathed his gun. He had lost all his patience with this woman. They had restocked their equipment in the car. They had grenades, rifles, and bullets. With these, they felt more confident. The Chinese men were in a bit of trouble. They didn't have any equipment. The 2 Chinese soldiers who retreated with them only asked for night vision binoculars and nothing else. Major David put away his gun and contacted Xia Jinyuan. Buddy, we need to gather and work together to evacuate. There are too many rebels. The cold muzzle moved away from her forehead. Reporter Chen's pale face finally regained some color. She gasped for air and her anger reached its peak. She was a reporter responsible for real-time reporting on the situation in Liabi. She came to Liabi to represent the Bay Sea. However, someone pointed a gun at her head and threatened to kill her if she didn't shut up. This was an insult to her and also a disrespect to the Bay Sea community. She would definitely report everything that had just happened. She would punish the person who pointed a gun at her head. She would do it. Xia Jinyuan could hear Major David's angry voice. He didn't answer immediately. They crouched behind cover and listened to the sound of footsteps nearby. Everyone held their breath, including the sensible little boy. He didn't know what had happened, but he knew that all the sounds he heard were gunshots. The people running outside were probably bad guys. He hugged his father's neck tightly, and his little face was buried in his father's shoulder, which made him feel safe. His eyes were wide open, revealing a fear that shouldn't belong to someone his age. Their footsteps were messy, and they quickly passed by the ruins. Xia Jinyuan, who was hiding in a building that had been destroyed by artillery fire, glanced around coldly and answered Major David, "Let's meet up first and try to avoid the area where the 2 armies are fighting." This was exactly what Major David wanted. He didn't want to get involved in the crossfire between the government army and the rebel government army. Major David heaved a sigh of relief when he learned that the Chinese soldiers had the same thoughts as him. Why was he relieved? While retreating, they were still able to rescue a family of 3 and bring them to his side. He was really worried that the Chinese soldiers would have the heart of a saint and in the end, they would all lose their lives. Now that his worries were gone, Major David felt that they would have a pleasant cooperation with the Chinese soldiers. Of course, it would be pleasant to work with a group of tough men. "Very good, man. Now we're here to look for you. Before we arrive, you need to hide well. Also, keep a close eye on the child. Don't let him make a sound." Chapter 52-37. Children were ticking time bombs. They would scream out of fear. When that happened, they would be in big trouble. Major David, who had kindly reminded him, joked, "You need to keep an eye on a small problem, but I have a big problem here that gives me a bigger headache." Big problem, Reporter Chern was right beside him. She heard everything clearly. Her eyes flashed with anger as she glared fiercely at the guy who despised her. He had already prepared a draft of the article and only needed a little polishing to turn it into Word. Xia Jinyuan knew who the big problem was. He really didn't know what the Gulf Coast reporter had done to make Major David despise her so much. He even lost the gentlemanly demeanor that he had always maintained. The sound of gunfire was endless outside. The entire sky above the city was filled with the sound of artillery fire. Overnight, the city was engulfed by artillery fire. Who knew how many innocent Libyan people had lost their lives? As for their homes had long been lost. They were riddled with holes and could not return to their former peace. The country of Libya had never been at peace. The sound of explosions continued to ring in the sky above the city. The entire city had lost its order. The devastated Libyan people rushed out of their temporary shelters in the middle of the night. The children who had lost their parents cried in fear. The adults who were running ran into them and passed by them. No one stopped because of the children's cries. Everyone was running for their lives. They all fled to the camps of the peacekeeping forces of various countries. That would be their shelter. As long as they entered the camps of the peacekeeping forces, the government forces would not mistakenly hit them and the anti-government militants would not randomly rush in. Only by entering the camps of the peacekeeping forces would they have a chance to survive. Have you contacted them? Have you contacted them? In the command center of the Chinese peacekeeping forces, a person in charge shouted. The 7 peacekeepers they had sent to rescue the 3 missing Gulf Coast reporters had yet to return. They had lost contact with them half an hour ago. When they learned that the rebel forces had exchanged fire at the nightclub where the rescuers were being rescued, the person in charge broke out in cold sweat. At the first exchange of fire, they had lost contact. The person in charge was very worried about whether they were in danger or had met with mishap. The station replied to the person in charge that they had not received any news. The British peacekeeping forces had not received any news either. The soldiers sent by both sides had all lost contact. A large number of refugees are rushing to the peacekeeping camp. Please support. Please support. Let them go, let them go. According to the latest report, the highest military officer in Liabai has rebelled. The rebels are trying to take control of the Liabai government. In China, Yi Qian was sitting in front of the television, watching the latest news report on Liabai. Reporter Chen from Wanhai did not release the report immediately. Our war correspondent had already sent the latest report back to China, as well as the current situation in Liabai. Yi Qian narrowed her eyes and stared intently at the television. She had experienced such a situation before. She had weaved in and out of gunfire and received the baptism of war. In the end, she had come back alive, covered in blood. It was already early in the morning in China. Yi Qian, who had just returned from training, turned on the TV and glanced at it. The real-time report did not last long. After it ended, Yi Qian turned off the television and walked around the base alone. She only returned to the dormitory when she felt a little cold from the cold wind. From her line of sight, she could see the figures of the Chinese peacekeepers. She also saw a large number of refugees pouring into the camp. She saw the Chinese peacekeepers maintaining order and organizing the refugees to take refuge in the camp. Chapter 52-38. Due to the 8-hour time difference between the two countries, it was already 5 o'clock in the morning when people in China saw the latest news from Liabai. Those who paid attention to military news could see the latest news from Xinhua News Agency when they turned on the TV. The camera swept across the faces of the refugees who had entered the camp. The joy on their faces was in stark contrast to the horror on the faces of the refugees who had yet to enter the camp. The video was a little blurry, but due to the crossfire less than 10 kilometers away from the peacekeeping camp, the camera could still see flames burning the city. The sound of gunfire, the sound of artillery fire, the running figures, and the crying people of Liabai. The country in the video was in deep trouble. Even through the TV screen, one could feel the destructive despair of life. Those who were more emotional were already wiping tears away with red eyes, while those who were more rational shook their heads and let out a long sigh. The mountains and rivers were shattered, the country was destroyed, and the people were dead. Due to the direct focus of the camera, very few people would notice that there was a line of small words flipping at the bottom of the screen. Yi Jian didn't notice it at first, and only noticed it when she accidentally glanced at it the second time. The subtitles appeared. According to the latest news, the 3 missing Gulf Coast reporters have been successfully rescued by our country's peacekeeping soldiers. Due to the betrayal of the Liabi officials, the rescuing peacekeepers and the 3 rescued Gulf Coast reporters have temporarily lost contact. Yi Qian's heart suddenly tightened when she saw the short line of words. She was a soldier who had been in a war-torn country and knew what losing contact meant. The war prevented the rescue soldiers from returning to the camp and also cut off the peacekeepers' contact with the camp. It was 5 o'clock in the morning in China, and 9 o'clock in the evening in Liabi was the most intense time of the war. Yi Qian, who had just finished her night parachute jump, was no longer sleepy. She was worried about the missing peacekeepers. Her heart rate was a little abnormal. She was panicking and in a mess. There was also a sense of suffocation that made even her breathing become particularly rapid. This feeling was very, very bad. It had happened again after a few years. The first time it happened, Grandpa Zhen passed away. The second time it happened, Uncle Chun was born. The third time it happened, Captain Xia was in danger. The fourth time. This was the fourth time. Moreover, after seeing the inconspicuous subtitles, a sense of suffocation suddenly hit her. Captain Xia. Captain Xia. Yi Qian's heart was beating wildly as she silently muttered her lover's name. She secretly clenched her fists, and a cold light appeared in her bright black eyes. The missing peacekeepers were most likely Captain Xia, and the rest of them were the special forces of the Snowfield Brigade. Hostage rescue was a life-and-death mission for the Snowfield Brigade. The identity of the Gulf Coast reporter was special. Since the country had agreed to send troops, they would definitely not send ordinary peacekeepers to rescue them. They would only send special forces with high success rate. The special forces of the Shuiyu Brigade would be the first choice. Back in the dormitory, the assistant class monitor noticed that Yi Jian didn't look well. He thought that Yi Jian's body had a strange reaction after parachuting, so he quickly asked, "Are you not feeling well? You don't look good." Hearing this, Yi Qian raised his hand and touched his face. "Do I look bad? Thank you for your concern, Deputy Squad Leader. I just saw the news in Liabi and saw that our peacekeepers had temporarily lost contact. I was a little worried." Afraid that the deputy squad leader would think too much, Yi Qian answered truthfully, "The first governor has rebelled, and the entire city is in a state of war. I'm a little worried that the missing peacekeepers might be in danger." Although it was another country, the female soldiers in the dormitory felt a lot more worried because it was related to their country's peacekeepers. Chapter 5239. The vice squad leader gently patted Yi Qian's shoulder. She could tell that Yi Qian was really worried about the missing peacekeepers. "It's fine, it's fine. The soldiers selected for peacekeeping are all soldiers with strong comprehensive abilities. After they are selected for peacekeeping, they will undergo several months of targeted training. Trust me, they will be fine and will return safely." Peacekeeping was not an easy task. It was like going from a peaceful country to a war-torn country that was constantly under attack by bullets and artillery. Before they went, all the peacekeepers were prepared to sacrifice themselves at any time. Some of the soldiers even left a suicide note in advance for the troop. If they returned safely, the suicide note would be destroyed. If they did not return, the suicide note would be given to their families. For high-risk Special Forces soldiers like Xia Jinyuan, who knew how many suicide notes they wrote every year. The content was different every time. This time, they also wrote suicide notes when they went to Liabi. Yi Qian knew that the squad leader was comforting him. He smiled slightly. "Yes, they will all return safely. Their families and comrades are waiting for them to come back." The smart Lu Hui could tell that something was different. She tilted her head and put down the military boots in her hands. She asked Yi Qian cautiously, "Are there any of your old comrades in the troops that will be sent out?" She was quite sharp. The vice squad leader, who did not think in this direction, froze for a moment. She saw that Yi Qian's expression suddenly became a bit more serious. The vice squad leader's heart sank. Lu Hui couldn't have been right? After Lu Hui finished speaking, she kept staring at Yi Qian. She naturally saw the serious expression on Yi Qian's face. She scolded herself in her heart. She squatted down to scrub her shoes and threw away the brush and boot. She stood up with a whoosh and hugged Yi Qian. It's fine, it's fine. The soldiers that can go on peacekeeping are all good soldiers in the company. Losing contact is nothing, they will definitely return safely. Don't think too much. Ever since she learned how powerful Yi Qian was, Lu Hui had become Yi Qian's #1 follower in the female squad. Sometimes, the squad leader could not help but scold her for being a dog. Lu Hui was not angry and still looked proud of it. Now that he saw that he was right, he panicked even more. Pull yourself together, Captain Yi. You're an unbeatable person. Our psychological quality has to pass. We can't be depressed because of uncertain things. People are thinner than yellow flowers. Yi Qian's heart was a bit heavy. After she cheered him up, the heavy feeling in his heart calmed down a lot. He hugged Lu Hui, who was comforting him, and smiled. It's fine, I can handle it. He continued, You're a good scout. You're so sharp, yet you saw through me. Actually, I'm just guessing whether there are any comrades from my old unit. I guess there are. Maybe not. Don't think too much. Lu Hui, who was breathing softly, put her chin on Yi Qian's shoulder and hung on Yi Qian like a sloth. Did you eat the ginseng and Ganoderma from Changbai Mountain? Why are you so energetic? We are so tired after an all-nighter that we can't even open our eyes, but you can still watch TV. Last night, they gathered at 7 o'clock and jumped into the mountains and rivers. The terrain was steep and there was a turbulent river. Everyone was nervous when they were descending. Even Captain Lei reminded all the paratroopers to pay attention to safety from time to time. The gap between the two parachutes must be wide. It could be seen that Captain Lei was sweating. Only their Captain Yi, Bold Yi, was fine. She was the only one who could still watch TV after coming back. She also happened to see her old comrades go missing in the war zone. This matter really made people feel bad. Chapter 5240. Yi Qian regretted that she didn't control her emotions and made them worry. Sometimes, it was hard for her to control her emotions when she met Captain Xia. She rubbed her face, looked up, and smiled brightly at the female soldiers. It's okay. I'll be fine after a while. Rest early. We'll gather in an hour and a half for the exercise. Because of the overnight parachute jump, the original 5:30 p.m. exercise time was delayed to 6:30 p.m., giving the soldiers an hour and a half to rest and adjust. They were to gather at 6:30 p.m. sharp without asking for leave. Now, the female soldiers who followed the male soldiers closely were no longer as relaxed as they were 6 months ago. After joining the Special Reconnaissance Team, they changed from ordinary paratroopers to special paratroopers, and the difficulty of their training directly increased. All the daytime training would not be delayed because of the overnight parachute jump. According to the rules, delaying the assembly by an hour and a half was already a big concession from Captain Lei. Yi Qian didn't want to affect everyone's rest because of her, so he urged everyone to go to bed. Sleep. We'll gather in an hour and a half. In the future, she had to learn to control her emotions. Now, the female soldiers, including the squad leader and deputy squad leader, were all centered around her. Her words and actions would directly affect the female soldiers' words and actions, so she had to be careful. Today, she lost control of her emotions, and this was the only time. While speaking, Yi Jian, who had already restrained her emotions, sent the female soldiers to the upper bunk. She then climbed onto the upper bunk and lay down. Fang Xing, who was sleeping on the lower bunk, suddenly whispered, "Captain Yi, have you ever thought of peacekeeping?" Since Yi Qian mentioned peacekeeping soldiers, Fang Xing didn't feel sleepy anymore. She lay on the bed and rolled over twice in a row. She mustered up the courage to ask Yi Qian. Fang Xing was a very introverted and shy female soldier. She had the stubbornness of a Sichuan person deep in her bones. She was low-key and steady in everything she did. Captain Lei liked her personality very much. Yi Qian also liked it very much. Hearing her whisper, Yi Qian leaned half of his body out from the top bunk and looked down at Fang Xing, who was awake. "What's wrong? Do you have any thoughts about peacekeeping?" "Yes, I want to go. But our unit shouldn't be able to go. The peacekeeping soldiers sent out are mainly from the army." Fang Xing spoke softly. She did not want everyone to know. "When I was still in the old army, I thought about it, but I knew that the chances were very small. It was so small that it was almost zero. The probability of sending airborne troops to peacekeeping was indeed very small, so small that it was negligible. Peacekeeping missions are even more dangerous than what we see on TV. There are all kinds of variables, and we don't know when we'll be out. The peacekeepers have their heads tied to their waistbands every day outside, and they could fall off at any time. Peacekeeping isn't as simple as you think. It's also more dangerous than you think. Even if you're outside the peacekeeping camp, you can still be bombarded at any time." Yi Qian spoke softly for Fang Xing to hear, as well as for the female soldiers who were still awake. Peacekeeping is a bridge of peace built with blood and bones. Blood and bones are forged, and spirit is the carrier. As long as the war continues, the bridge will never be destroyed. This was the spirit, as well as the great love that was forged with life. Memories of the past flashed through his mind. Yi Qian closed his eyes to hide the surging undercurrent in them. "Her Captain Xia, please come back safely. Please remember our promise. You go away, I'll wait." Fang Xing didn't speak for a long time. After a while, her lips moved and closed. She didn't ask any more questions and closed her eyes as if she had fallen asleep. Chapter 52-41. Actually, she really wanted to ask Yi Qian, who had a deep understanding of peacekeeping is not easy, if she had participated in peacekeeping before. She wanted to ask, but she didn't dare to, so it was better to bury it in her heart. Captain Yi had a lot of secrets, and everyone knew about it, so she didn't ask. The female soldiers didn't say anything else. They blinked, closed their eyes, turned over, and fell asleep after a while. Yi Jian raised her hand and gently placed it on her chest. Her heart was thumping as if it was filled with lead, causing her to feel very uncomfortable. Every time she breathed in and out, the place where her heart was beating pulled at her flesh and blood, causing her to feel pain. Her eyes were already red. She placed one hand on her chest and the other hand on her forehead, covering her eyes and hiding the panic on her face. It's okay. Don't panic. Who is Captain Xia? He definitely won't let anything happen to me." Yi Qian kept comforting herself in her heart with her eyes closed. As long as she thought that the missing peacekeepers might be comrades of Captain Xia and the Snowfield Brigade, she couldn't fall asleep at all. The rebels were trying to take over the entire city. Would the Chinese peacekeepers be in danger? The rebels and anti-government militants didn't want peacekeepers to appear in the countries they wanted to take over, because it would make them hesitate. From the battle tonight, the rebels' firepower was extremely fierce. Moreover, it was the top military officer in Liabia who started the rebellion. It was possible that they would fire at the peacekeepers of other countries. This kind of thing was hard to say. If a shell was mistakenly fired, and a few scapegoats were pushed out to accept international condemnation, the matter would be left unsettled in the end. In war, it was normal to accidentally fire. In war, it was also normal for a few peacekeepers to die. Yi Qian didn't fall asleep until the delayed whistle sounded. When the whistle sounded, she was the first to sit up and wash up as quickly as possible. The only way to stop herself from thinking too much was to devote herself to training and do what was right in front of her. It was 6:30 in the morning in China and 10:30 in the evening in Liabia. Xia Jinyuan and Major David had completed the rendezvous. It was only a distance of 3 kilometers, but they took a total of 3.5 hours to successfully meet up. It was obvious how dangerous it was outside. You need to replenish your ammunition first. This is for you. This is for you. Hold it well, fellow Chinese, we might have a fight to the death tonight. Major David generously handed over the bulletproof vests, rifles, grenades, and magazines to Xia Jinyuan. Why were they so slow? With each person carrying an extra set of equipment, it was natural that they would be slower. After receiving the equipment, Xia Jinyuan reached out his fist and bumped it with Major David's. Nice working with you, Major. Now that they had equipment, they had another layer of protection for their successful retreat. Reporter Chen of Wanhai, who had been protected by the British peacekeeping soldiers, stared at the few black figures who had converged. His eyes stared as if he wanted to tear the darkness of the night apart so that he could see clearly who the soldiers behind them were. After checking all the equipment, Xia Jinyuan touched the grenade on Biyao's waist. The heavy and round feeling of the grenade gave him a sense of security. As a professional soldier, weapons and equipment were his life. Without weapons and equipment, even the most powerful soldier would worry about it. Now that he had weapons and equipment, the cold expression on Xia Jinyuan's face had melted a lot. This time, he really felt that the British peacekeeping soldiers had helped him in his hour of need. Chapter 52-42. The exchange of gunfire continued at the back. Listening to the sound of bullets, one side had set up an anti-aircraft machine gun. The bullets of the anti-aircraft machine gun were thicker than a finger. If one was unlucky and got hit, there would be a bloody hole the size of a bowl wherever it hit. Even if one could be saved, one would still be disabled. No one dared to face the anti-aircraft machine gun head-on, and Xia Jinyuan was no exception. Creting out the city map, Xia Jinyuan turned on the miniature flashlight. The extremely thin beam shone on the map. Reporter Chen saw the other party's slender hands, which were like a pianist's, slowly moving across the map. Even his movements were like playing the piano. Major, we are now here, Saya Avenue. This is the location of the nightclub and also the place where the exchange of gunfire is the most concentrated. From here to here, we are currently surrounded by the rebel army. There are dozens of us, and we are too big a target. It will be difficult to break out of the encirclement. He could speak fluent English without an accent. His voice was low, a bit like water dripping from the eaves of a mountain temple after the rain. It was incomparably sweet and had the power to penetrate stone. From the side profile, Reporter Chen judged that the other party was a very young soldier, a soldier from the Chinese side. Chinese soldiers appeared in the nightclub. Reporter Chen's eyes flickered slightly. She moved closer to her colleague. The one who spoke is a Chinese soldier. They appeared in the nightclub. Find a way to see their appearance clearly, draw them, and send them back to the Bay Area. Reporter Chen was the most senior of the 3 Bay Area reporters. The other 2 male reporters were called reporters, but one was in charge of carrying equipment, and the other was in charge of photography and tracking. The male colleague in charge of photography and tracking could draw a good pencil drawing, especially a portrait of a person. With an ordinary pencil, he could draw more than 80% of the other party's appearance. The male colleague, who understood the deep meaning of Reporter Chen's words, nodded and replied softly, "I just roughly counted. There should be 6 to 7 of them. We can draw 3 or 4 of them. If the Chinese soldiers came to the nightclub, it will definitely cause a big storm back in China. Their image will be damaged. Well, seize the opportunity. I will cooperate appropriately on my side." Reporter Chen spoke softly, and her voice was full of suppressed excitement. She had been watching the Chinese peacekeepers for more than half a month and had not found a trace of evidence that damaged the image of the Chinese soldiers. Now that the evidence was directly in her hands, how could she miss it? The other male colleague in charge of carrying equipment said regretfully, "If we still had our cameras, it would be more convincing. They have always said that the Chinese troops are strict, but now it seems that they are just that." Do you really believe what they say? They are lagging behind everywhere. If they don't stick gold on their faces, who will pay attention to them? Reporter Chen sneered and stared at the Chinese soldiers with contempt. They're just putting on an act. Only their own people think that their soldiers are very good and powerful. Keep a close eye on them and remember every word they say. The fluent English in the front corner never stopped, and there were even some professional terms that she didn't understand. Reporter Chen sneered contemptuously, "I really didn't expect this Chinese soldier to speak English. Looks like you've trained him well." Looking around again, Reporter Chen tried to find the person who had suddenly appeared and scared her, but she couldn't find him. She retracted her gaze and continued to stare at Xia Jinyuan, who was talking to the British soldiers. The other Chinese soldiers didn't appear. It seems that he's the only one who can speak English. Don't expect a country with poor education and no quality to be strong. What Ajin said makes a lot of sense. The male colleague echoed and deeply agreed. Chapter 52-43. The three Gulf reporters muttered to themselves. After some discussion, Xia Jinyuan and Major David decided on the best retreat route. Xia Jinyuan, who had been looking down at the map, suddenly looked up. His sharp gaze swept towards a spot in the darkness. His dark eyes were cold and piercing. Reporter Chen was so shocked that she fell back awkwardly as if she had been hit by something substantial. "Chen Zhen, be careful." Her male colleague saw this and shouted in shock. He quickly reached out to support Reporter Chen, who was falling back. Reporter Chen's real name was Chen Shuzhen. The male colleague's voice was a little loud, especially in the dark and quiet surroundings. The soldiers hiding in the dark glanced coldly in her direction, their faces tense. These people were reporters. How could they not be stupid to death? They were retreating now, but they still dared to make a sound. F***CK. The T6 soldier cursed softly and swallowed the saliva that came out of his mouth. He gripped the rifle in his hand tightly and looked around fiercely. The British reporter who had been rescued hurriedly drew a cross in front of his chest. Finally, he clasped his hands together and prayed to God. Amen. They were also frightened by the sudden sound and broke out in cold sweat. It was Chen Shuzhen's first time being so frightened by someone's gaze that she almost fell down. Therefore, she felt very embarrassed. She also felt that the Chinese soldier who suddenly looked at her coldly was deliberately trying to embarrass her. Low class. She steadied herself and scolded softly and angrily. She sounded angry, but if one listened carefully, they could tell that she was weak. Her voice was very weak. She forced herself to maintain what she thought was her arrogance. In exchange, Xia Jinyuan sneered coldly. "See, it's big trouble. I have a headache, but we can't leave them behind." Major David rubbed his temples and said with a headache, "If we don't allow her to get out of the car, she will become an illegal detainee. My God, doesn't she know that it's dangerous outside and that she needs to be protected?" Xia Jinyuan said calmly, "Maybe she thinks that they have enough ability to leave alive. Next time, if they want to leave, we don't have to keep them." "Buddy, are you serious?" "Of course, I'm very serious. I never joke around." Xia Jinyuan put away the city map and replied to Major David politely with a smile. "After all, we need to respect their choices. Everyone has their own choices, and no one can restrict them because of this, right?" Major David raised his eyebrows. "Yes, you're right. I should respect their choice." Major David, who had already seen how troublesome Reporter Chen was, wanted to get rid of him even more than Xia Jinyuan. Unfortunately, they all knew that he was just joking. How could they possibly get rid of him? No matter how big the trouble was, he had to continue to bear it until he brought them out safely. A British soldier stood up and squatted in front of Chen Shuzhen. With a stern face, he said coldly, "All of us are in danger now. If you continue to be stupid, please leave immediately." But he was not as patient as Major David. If there were any rebels nearby, all it would take was a bomb to blow everyone up and send them to hell. Reporter Chen, who was frightened, was threatened again. She thought that she was being threatened, and her eyes were filled with anger. Your attitude towards reporters is very bad. It's a serious violation of the professional ethics that peacekeeping soldiers should have. You don't know how to respect others. I feel ashamed of you. Chapter 52-44. At that moment, reporter Chen Shuzhen was in a terrible mood. She was disrespected, humiliated, and even threatened. This was the first time Chen Shuzhen, who had been flattered all these years, had experienced this. The difference was so great that she was extremely angry. Remember, madam, the people you feel ashamed of are the ones who risk their lives to save you, the British soldiers said in a low voice. They all wanted to punch this ungrateful woman in the face. However, reporter Chen didn't feel that they had saved her. It would have been better if they didn't mention it, but now that they did, it made her even angrier. She leaned forward slightly and gritted her teeth. It's your arrogance that caused all my investigations to go to waste. Ask your own country's reporters why we were at the nightclub. Bastards! Why were they at the nightclub? The 3 British reporters who followed the investigation at the nightclub gave the best answer. It also made Xia Jinyuan and Major David understand why the rebels suddenly revolted around the nightclub. The high-ranking official behind the nightclub, Amherst, was also there that night. He secretly met with the 2 ethnic leaders. Ives, who had rebelled, didn't make a move until today. He suddenly rebelled and tried to kill Amherst in the nightclub, causing the Libyan government to lose another high-ranking official. Amherst was able to become a high-ranking official in the Libyan government because he was the leader of a large ethnic group in Libya. If Amherst was killed, the ethnic group would definitely hate the government, causing the already chaotic Libyan government to become even more unstable. Chen Shuzhen and the other 2 entered the nightclub because they accidentally recognized Amherst. At that time, Chen Shuzhen only wanted to follow him and then publish a news article that exposed the corruption of the Libyan government's high-ranking officials. She didn't expect to be discovered by Amherst's bodyguards and be detained. The British reporters were just unlucky. They didn't know anything and were arrested because they drank beer with Chen Shuzhen and the other 2. Amherst didn't plan to do anything to these reporters. He was just worried that the news would be leaked before the alliance was formed and the anti-government militants would know about it beforehand and take action. He planned to lock them up first and only release them after the alliance was formed. It would only take 3 to 5 days. Chen Shuzhen was an influential author. At the same time, she was also the daughter of a high-ranking official in Wanhai. If something were to happen to her, none of her subordinates would be able to answer to the high-ranking official. That was why they had asked for help. Chen Shuzhen, who had been rescued, had not been cooperative from the beginning. She did not think that her life was saved by the peacekeepers at the risk of their lives. The fundamental reason was that the big news she wanted to secretly track was completely worthless because of her rescue. If she knew about it, the reporters from other countries would definitely know about it as well. Then, if she were to report about it, she would be taking advantage of others and would no longer be able to show her personal ability. Therefore, Chen Shuzhen was very angry. Xia Jinyuan, who had never used violence, cursed in his heart, "Damn it!" So that was what happened. He didn't believe that the people in the Bay Area didn't know where Chen Shuzhen had gone. He just didn't say it on purpose. Xia Jinyuan stepped on the ground and said coldly in English, "If you think that we are delaying you, okay, you have two choices. First, you can leave and return to the nightclub to report the latest battle situation. Second, follow us closely and get out of here alive." Chen Shuzhen was still apprehensive of the British soldiers. She was apprehensive of the country behind the British soldiers. Although her words were offensive, she knew her limits. Chapter 52-45. Faced with the Chinese soldiers, Chen Shuzhen did not hold back. She looked down on the country behind the Chinese soldiers and had never taken them seriously. "You're threatening me, aren't you?" I'll follow you out of here alive." "Thank you, but I really don't dare to follow you. Do you think people like you who don't even have the basic qualities deserve to be soldiers?" She was very rude and even insulting them. The T6 combatants were already gritting their teeth. Could they teach her a lesson? They really wanted to teach her a lesson. Xia Jinyuan said to Major David, "After we get out of here, please be our witness and remember everything she said to me." Major David, who was also a soldier, was also furious. He nodded with a cold expression. "Okay, bro. I'll remember everything she said. If you're so cowardly and incompetent, don't drag the soldiers of a big country into this. You'll only make us look down on you even more." Chen Shuzhen was not afraid of what she said today getting out. It would be even better if it got out so that everyone would know how much she looked down on the Chinese soldiers. So what if she looked down on the Chinese soldiers? If he had the guts, he could scold her and beat her up. As long as he dared to lay a hand on her or say anything harsh to her, she would make him regret it for the rest of his life. How could a barbaric, brainless, and uncultured person like him fight with her? The T6 combatant narrowed his eyes and said coldly to V8, "Trying to goad her? It looks like Reporter Chen is really going all out to get dirt on us. What a pity. She's destined to lose against our captain. No one will think you're mute if you don't speak." V8, who was looking coldly at the dark streets of the club, answered calmly. His voice was as soft as a strand of silk. "She'll regret every word she said today." Based on their understanding of Q King, Reporter Chen would definitely be in for it. Xia Jinyuan, who did not fall for the trick, glanced contemptuously at Reporter Chen, who was trying to goad him into action. He chuckled softly. "That IQ of hers is quite worrying. Watch your mouth." The male colleague in charge of tracking the camera stepped forward and pushed Xia Jinyuan away. He shouted, "Damn it, apologize!" But before he could reach out his hand, it was grabbed by a British soldier who was staring at him from the side and twisted his hand back. The male colleague, whose wrist was twisted, was in so much pain that his face changed drastically. Before he could cry out in pain, something cold was suddenly pressed against his mouth. It was the butt of a rifle. "Once again," he warned, "you have no right to speak here. If you open your mouth again, all your teeth will fall out." The male colleague who had failed to stand up for Chungu and was beaten back instead blushed. He still wanted to say something, but another male colleague secretly pulled him back and reminded him in the local language, "Don't confront the British soldiers. They are not Reporter Chen's target." One sentence was enough to calm the male colleague down. Chen Shuzhen, who had deliberately done this, saw that the Chinese soldiers were not fooled, and her face became even more ugly. She took a deep breath and suppressed the unwillingness in her heart. There was no hurry. There was still time. As long as she followed these Chinese soldiers closely tonight, she would definitely find dirt that would damage the image of the Chinese soldiers. The sneer on Xia Jinyuan's face deepened. "Is this what a reporter is like?" Reporter Chen Shuzhen's face darkened even more. She could hear the contempt in this cold "heh." A group of barbaric and low-quality guys actually dared to look down on her. How infuriating, how infuriating! Chapter 5246. Xia Jinyuan didn't want to pay any more attention to reporter Chen, who had an inexplicable sense of superiority in front of them. He turned his head and asked Major David, "How about we leave in 5 minutes?" "Okay, no problem." Major David made an okay gesture. In the end, Major David listened to the 3 Gulf Coast reporters panting angrily. He was very curious about what the Chinese man said to make the 3 of them so angry. Xia Jinyuan didn't answer his question. He just replied with a faint smile, "But I'm reminding them to pay attention to their identities." 5 minutes were almost up, and the gunfire outside was still incessant. Xia Jinyuan walked to the family of 3 who had been huddled in the corner without saying a word. As he approached, he heard the little boy's long breathing without any worries. The little boy had fallen asleep while listening to the gunfire. Xia Jinyuan squatted down, raised his hand, and precisely touched the little boy's head. He stroked it gently and said, "It's good that you're asleep. Follow behind us later. Don't be afraid. We'll take you to the peacekeeping camp. When you return to China, we'll try our best to help you. But your nationality has changed, so we can only try our best." Okay. Thank you so much." The couple was moved to tears and thanked them again. They placed all their hopes of getting out alive on the Chinese soldiers who protected them. Even if their nationality had changed, they still subconsciously believed in the Chinese soldiers. At this moment, they even regretted changing their nationality. The wife held her husband's arm tightly. Her eyes were red and swollen from crying. The night in Libya was still long. The city shrouded in death was filled with smoke. Countless Libyan people couldn't sleep at night and waited for dawn in fear. In fact, there was no difference between night and dawn for them. The city at dawn was also very dangerous, and was also shrouded in the flames of war. Therefore, there was no difference between night and dawn. Citizens living in peaceful countries would never know how deep the yearning for peace in war-torn countries was. They longed for peace, they hoped for freedom, and they hoped for miracles. Several black shadows passed through the streets that were hit by gunfire. They moved forward at the fastest speed and entered the next shelter. In front, the British soldiers cleared the way and squatted down every few steps so that the people behind them could follow closely. In the middle, 3 British soldiers covered the 6 reporters as they advanced. T6 and V8 covered the family of 3 as they advanced. Xia Jinyuan, G3, and the others followed closely behind. There were many people, and they were a big target. Every movement was filled with danger. The light from the cannons illuminated the street, and also illuminated the figures that were running past the street. Quick! Keep up! At the front, the British soldiers who were squatting down whispered to each other. Behind them, the footsteps of the soldiers were hurried, and they quickly passed by while muttering, "Go! Finally, they squatted down tightly under the broken walls, where the air was filled with the smell of gunpowder. One by one, they panted and adjusted for a short period of time. Chen Shuzhen looked at the artillery fire in front of her, and her eyes flashed with fear. She felt that it was a pity that her camera had been taken away, so she couldn't take pictures at such a close distance. As soon as she poked her head out, the British soldier who was staring at her raised his head and pressed it down. He didn't want to sacrifice himself, and he didn't want to sacrifice himself for the stupid reporter next to him. Chen Shuzhen, whose head was pressed so hard that it hit the broken wall, was about to explode. "Let go of your hand. Don't make me angry." The hand that was pressing down on her head left, and the British soldier even wiped it on his pants in disgust. He really felt that it was a little dirty. Fortunately, Chen Shuzhen didn't see the soldier's secret movements. Otherwise, she would be so angry that her soul would leave her body. Chapter 5247. Go! The British soldiers at the front set off again. They were now passing through the most dangerous area. With the nightclub as the center, The rebel army had surrounded it for at least 3 kilometers. Amherst appeared at the nightclub. Ives had not received the news of Amherst's death, so he had to be wary of Amherst leaving alive. He could hear the footsteps of the rebel soldiers running past him. The government troops were already fighting with the rebel soldiers. Both sides were fighting fiercely, and the bullets and grenades did not stop. The sleeping boy was startled awake. Just as he mumbled, "Daddy," his mouth was covered. He couldn't speak. He couldn't speak. The mother was so nervous that she hugged her husband's arm tightly. She was so scared that her legs were trembling violently. She didn't even have the strength to stand up. Everyone's heartstrings were stretched taut. Once they were discovered by the rebel army, they would not be given a chance to speak, nor would they verify their identities. They would simply sweep them with their anti-aircraft guns, leaving no future trouble. "Surround this place. Quick! Surround this place!" Before he could finish his sentence, the sound of running footsteps stopped in front of him, and someone shouted loudly. Xia Jinyuan closed his eyes and swallowed softly. The place where they were surrounded was the street that they had just passed through. If they had been a step too late, everyone would have been blocked off. If they had been caught like a turtle in a jar, everyone would have died without a doubt. The 3 British reporters gasped for breath and clenched their fists tightly. As reporters, they were obviously very scared, but they didn't want to miss such a close battle. They couldn't see outside with their eyes wide open, so they could only prick up their ears and listen carefully to the movements outside. They didn't have a camera, but with this close encounter with the rebels, they could write a script and publish everything they had experienced. Chen Shuzhen and the other 2 were the same. They were so scared that their hands and feet were trembling. Their ears were pricked up as they listened carefully to the movements outside. Their thoughts were exactly the same as the British reporters. After about 10 minutes, the British soldiers confirmed that they could leave. The group of people bent their backs and slowly moved away. They could only move. They couldn't walk over at all. If they walked fast, they were afraid that they would kick a stone or something and make a sound, which would alert the rebels who were only 1 wall away. The sleeping little boy nestled his head on his father's shoulder. Children were actually very sensitive. Although he didn't understand much, he knew that now wasn't the time for him to talk. His small hands hugged his father's neck tightly, and he didn't move at all. He was very obedient. At least the little boy had his parents to rely on. Many children of his age had lost their parents and lived alone. What awaited them was perhaps death. No one spoke. They followed closely step by step. Xia Jinyuan, who was at the back, arched his back. In the dark, he stared at the back with his cold black eyes that seemed to have sword light flashing in them. He signaled his comrades who were a few steps behind him to follow, one in front of the other in order to ensure the safety of the rear. Despite being so careful, an accident still happened. Chen Shuzhen turned her head to look at the rebel army behind her, which was getting further and further away from her. She was distracted and her foot landed a little too heavily. The tip of her shoe kicked something and made a very clear, clang sound. The sound was not loud, but with the surroundings so quiet, even if it was not loud, it was still loud. Chapter 52-48. There was a dead silence in the air. Then, the rebel soldiers at the back roared in the local language. They were just testing the waters, and did not rush over immediately. However, the frightened Chen Shuzhen screamed because her heartstrings were too tense. "Damn it! Quick! Hide! Hide!" This time, they had poked the hornet's nest. The woman's voice was sharp to begin with. After hearing her scream, the rebel soldiers at the back did not need to test the waters anymore. Countless whoosh-whoosh sounds of bullets being loaded could be heard. Within a few seconds, the sound of gunshots could be heard. Chen Shuzhen was really scared this time. Her knees were weak and she was lying on the ground. She didn't know what she should do other than screaming, "Ah!" The British soldiers pulled her back, But when they realized that the woman only knew how to scream and did not know how to quickly hide, they gave up and rolled into the ruins. The V8 and T6 took the family of 3 to cover as quickly as they could. Fortunately, they were on the side of the street where they could temporarily hide in the rubble. Otherwise, they would have been riddled with bullet holes by the rebel soldiers' bullet. Chen Shuzhen, who only knew how to lie there motionlessly, no longer had the arrogance from before. Under the bullets, all of her arrogance disappeared. Despair came crashing down on her like a huge wave in the sea. The Grim Reaper could take her life at any time. Save me, hurry up and save me," she screamed in despair. She did not dare to move and could only stay where she was. The bullets flew over her body. If she wasn't sprawled on the ground, she would have been pierced by the bullet. Xia Jinyuan heard her screams. No matter how much he disliked her, he could not really leave her alone outside. Everyone hid well, and she was the only one outside. "Suppress the fire. I'll drag her over," Xia Jinyuan communicated in English through the earpiece. He was speaking to his comrades and also to Major David and the others. It had nothing to do with him. It was because he was a soldier. The special forces of the Snowfield Brigade did not stop Xia Jinyuan. Instead, they calmly replied to their Q-King, "Yes, sir." He had to save people and protect his own life. Grabbing the grenade Major David had given him, he pulled it out and held it in his hand. Under the rain of bullets, countless fragments of mud and stone flew everywhere, like small sharp blades, leaving behind small wounds on his bare skin. Xia Jinyuan wiped his cheeks. His cheeks were grazed by debris, and his fingers were pressed against them. He felt a tingling sensation that calmed him down. After putting away his rifle, Xia Jinyuan bent down. His voice was as calm as a mirror as he calmly arranged the next step. Baihe and K7 will be the main attackers. V8 and T6 will suppress them. Z7 and G3 will cover them. I'll call 1, 2, 3. Start. Got it. Got it. Got it. The voices of his comrades could be heard through the earpiece. At this moment, they were Xia Jinyuan's most solid support. With them around, their Q-King would never be in danger. Major David actually did not agree with Xia Jinyuan's actions. He did not want to save a reporter who only knew how to question others and did not know how to be grateful. After saving her, it was very likely that she would wrongly accuse them. Major David did not want to save her at all. However, the Chinese soldier's insistence made him feel helpless. "Buddy, you can totally give up on her," Major David advised. "The fire is too strong. You don't have enough confidence to save her. Just now, my comrades wanted to save her, but she was too stupid and did not know how to cooperate. I can tell you very seriously, buddy. She will definitely drag you down and even kill you. Do you still choose to save her?" Chapter 5249. Xia Jinyuan, who was making the final adjustments, knew that Major David was thinking for him. His thin lips curved up slightly. "Major, thank you for your advice. I have to save her. It's my duty to protect any Chinese citizen. Even if the people outside didn't recognize her as a Chinese citizen." Major David was silent for a few seconds before he replied, "Okay, I respect your decision. We'll cooperate with you. I hope you can come back alive." "I'll come back alive." Xia Jinyuan's smile deepened as he held onto the grenade. His little fox was still waiting for him. How could he miss her? 1, 2, 3. Suppress. Xia Jinyuan's cold voice came from the earpiece. The soldiers of the Shui Yu Brigade concentrated their firepower to suppress the rebels while Major David and the rest dispersed the rebels' firepower. Both sides cooperated and the gunshots were dense and bullets rained down. Chen Shuzhen was scared out of her wits. She hugged her head and couldn't even scream. She was trembling all over like a dog that had fallen into the water in winter. She no longer had the arrogance of the past. In the ruins, Chen Shuzhen's two colleagues were so scared that they hugged each other tightly. They didn't even know that Chen Shuzhen didn't even try to hide. Life and death situations were the best test of human nature. For example, these two male colleagues would try to curry favor with Chen Shuv because of her identity. However, when it came to life and death situations, they would run away faster than anyone else. If they lost their lives, everything would be in vain. The newly immigrated couple only knew how to hug their son tightly. The family of three huddled together and leaned on each other for warmth. In the darkness, the fear in their eyes was a fear that they would never experience again. "Daddy, I'm scared." The little boy's soft voice drifted clearly into his father's ears. His father, who was also scared, could hide his fear well in front of his son who needed his protection. He kissed his son's delicate face and comforted him softly. "Don't be scared. We're brave men. Don't be scared. Do you know who's been protecting us? They're uncles from the People's Liberation Army. With them around, we don't have to be afraid." "What do the People's Liberation Army uncles do? Why don't we have to be afraid with them around?" Although the little boy was afraid, he was still an ignorant representative who did not know the difference between life and death. His attention was quickly diverted as he asked his father curiously. "The uncles from the People's Liberation Army can defeat the bad guys and save our Chi-Chi. They are very powerful, even more powerful than Superman. As long as they are here, we will be very safe. Wasn't Chi-Chi separated from Daddy and Mommy before?" In the end, it was the People's Liberation Army uncle who sent Chi-Chi back to Daddy and Mommy's side. He even saved Daddy and Mommy. "Chi-Chi, don't you think the People's Liberation Army uncle is very powerful?" The ignorant child's understanding was limited. Even after his father's explanation, he still did not fully understand. He blinked his innocent eyes and whispered, "Is it true that as long as the People's Liberation Army uncle who is as powerful as Superman doesn't leave, we will be safe? Will the People's Liberation Army uncle send us home?" "The People's Liberation Army uncle will send us home, so Chi-Chi is not afraid. With the People's Liberation Army uncle here, Daddy and Mommy here, Chi-Chi is not afraid." His father coaxed him patiently. He was clearly so scared that his hands and feet were trembling. He tried his best to control his voice and make it sound calm so that his son would feel safe. He had to coax his son. He was afraid that his son would cry. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Nights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.